When a billionaire CEO's empire crashes minutes before launch, she never expects salvation to come from the maintenance man in the corner, or that he'll dare to refuse her. Selena Vance has built her world on control, power, and the belief that everyone has a price. Miles Carter is about to prove her wrong. In a high-stakes showdown where billions hang in the balance and pride costs everything, one father will choose his daughter's school event over corporate glory, forcing a woman who's never lost to face the one thing money can't buy: a man who can't be owned. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The 42nd floor of Nexus Technologies gleamed with the kind of aggressive modernity that screamed success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle's skyline, Italian marble that clicked under designer heels, and enough steel and glass to build a small aircraft carrier. The executive boardroom embodied everything Selena Vance had constructed in her 34 years, sharp, cold, and unforgiving. Right now, it was also full of terrified people. "Explain to me," Selena said, her voice dropping to that particular register that made seasoned executives check their retirement portfolios. "How in the name of everything holy, our entire server infrastructure collapsed 18 minutes before the biggest product launch in this company's history?" She stood at the head of the obsidian conference table, perfectly still in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that suggested she'd murdered efficiency itself and worn its corpse as a crown. Everything about Selena Vance was deliberate, controlled, weaponized. Everything except the situation currently exploding in her face. Thomas Chen, her chief technology officer, looked like he was preparing for his own execution. "We're not entirely sure, Ms. Vance. The diagnostic team is running—" "Diagnostic?" Selena's laugh could have stripped paint. "Thomas, in 14 minutes, we're supposed to unveil Prism to 47 million viewers across 6 continents. Prism, the AI security platform we've spent 3 years and $200 million developing. The platform currently being demonstrated by our competitors in Tokyo, London, and San Francisco. The platform that will either make Nexus Technologies the global leader in cybersecurity or reduce us to a cautionary tale in business school textbooks." She let that hang in the air like a guillotine blade. "And you're telling me about diagnostics?" Victoria Sloan, the chief operating officer, cleared her throat carefully. She'd worked with Selena long enough to know when the ice was about to crack. "We've contacted our backup vendors. They're saying 4 to 6 hours minimum before—" 4 to 6 hours? Selena's fingers drummed once against the table, the only outward sign of the rage building behind her composed exterior. "By which time, our pre-orders will have evaporated, our investors will have crucified us in the press, and Titan Security will have absorbed our market share like Sherman through Georgia." She turned to face the windows, looking out over the city that had watched her build an empire from nothing. Orphaned at 16, hustled through state care, scholarships earned through sheer vicious determination, and an MBA from Stanford that she'd paid for by working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. Every inch of Nexus Technologies was built on her refusal to be defeated by anything or anyone. The universe was testing that theory today. "I want solutions," she said quietly, which was somehow worse than the yelling. "Not excuses, not explanations, not corporate sympathy. Solutions. You have 60 seconds before I start making personnel decisions that will leave this room considerably emptier." The panic was palpable. Junior executives tried to disappear into their chairs. Thomas was typing frantically on his tablet, probably drafting his resignation letter. Victoria had that look of someone calculating whether her non-compete clause would survive legal challenge. And then, from the corner of the room near the service entrance, a voice spoke up. "I can fix it." Every head turned. Selena's eyes narrowed. Standing by the door, tools still in hand from whatever minor repair had brought him to the executive floor, was a maintenance worker. He wore navy coveralls with M Carter stitched over the pocket, work boots that had seen actual work, and an expression of complete calm that seemed wildly inappropriate for the crisis currently unfolding. For a moment, nobody spoke. It was like a janitor had walked into the Sistine Chapel and offered to touch up Michelangelo's work. Then Selena smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'm sorry, she said, her tone dripping with acidic politeness. I don't believe we've met. You are? Miles Carter, Facilities Maintenance. He said it simply, without embarrassment or apology. I've been working here for 3 years, and I can fix your server problem. The room rippled with uncomfortable laughter. Thomas actually put his face in his hands. Victoria looked away, already dissociating from the secondhand embarrassment. Selina walked toward Miles slowly, her heels marking time like a countdown. She stopped 3 feet away, studying him with the intensity of an entomologist examining a particularly odd specimen. He was probably around her age, maybe slightly older. Tall, with the kind of build that came from actual physical work rather than expensive gym memberships. Dark hair starting to show silver at the temples. Sharp cheekbones, steady dark eyes, and an absolutely infuriating lack of nervousness. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "do you have any idea what's happening right now?" "Yes, ma'am. Your main server infrastructure has crashed, taking down your launch platform, customer database, and demonstration systems. You've got about 12 minutes before your global unveiling turns into a global embarrassment." The accuracy of his summary made several executives shift uncomfortably. Selina's smile widened. "And you, a maintenance worker, believe you can solve a problem that our chief technology officer, our entire IT department, and 3 outside consulting firms cannot?" "Yes, ma'am." The sheer audacity of it was almost refreshing. Selina felt something stir in her chest. Not quite respect, but maybe distant cousin to it. Amusement, perhaps. Or the predatory satisfaction of a cat that's just noticed a mouse doing something unusually stupid. "Tell me, Mr. Carter," she said, circling him slowly now, "what makes you think you're qualified to touch our systems? Do you have a degree in computer science? Network engineering? Any relevant certifications?" "No, ma'am." "No." She savored the word. "So your qualifications are what, exactly? You're very good at changing light bulbs? Exceptional at unclogging toilets?" A few nervous laughs rippled through the executives. Selina was performing now, and everyone knew it. This was the part she excelled at, the public dismantling of presumption, the demonstration of exactly why hierarchy existed and why people stayed in their designated places. Miles looked at her evenly. "My qualifications are that I know what's wrong with your system, I know how to fix it, and I can do it in the time you have left. What you do with that information is up to you." The room went silent. Nobody talked to Selina Vance like that. Nobody. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the boardroom. "You know what I think, Mr. Carter? I think you're bored. I think you're tired of being invisible, of pushing mop buckets and replacing ceiling tiles while important people do important work. I think you saw an opportunity to play hero, to have your little moment in the spotlight." She paused, letting the cruelty of it settle. "So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you your moment. I'm going to let you try to fix our system. And when you fail, because you will fail, I'll have security escort you out, and you can go back to whatever it is maintenance workers do when they're not embarrassing themselves in executive boardrooms." Miles didn't flinch. "And if I succeed?" Selina's laugh was genuine now, delighted. "If you succeed? If you, Mr. Carter, the maintenance man, somehow manage to save my company's $200 million launch in the next 11 minutes, I will personally write you a check for $1 million. The room gasped. Thomas looked like he'd been slapped. Victoria mouthed, "What are you doing?" But Selina ignored her. She was on a roll now, energized by her own performance. "But here's the thing, that's not enough, is it? Money's too easy, too boring. So let's make this interesting. If you save my launch, Mr. Carter, I'll give you $1 million and a kiss. Right here, in front of everyone. Because when you accomplish the impossible, you deserve something memorable, don't you think?" She said it loudly enough for the entire room to hear, deliberately crude, turning the moment into theater, turning Miles into a spectacle, a joke, a man who would soon be humiliated for daring to reach above his station. This was what Selina Vance did. This was how she maintained control, by making examples of presumption, by demonstrating that the hierarchy existed for a reason, by crushing any challenge before it could take root. Miles looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered across his face, not Anger, exactly. Something deeper, sadder. Like he'd seen this play before and knew all the lines. No deal, he said quietly. Selina blinked. Excuse me? No deal, Ms. Vance. I'll fix your systems. I'll save your launch. But I won't do it for your money or your kiss or your public spectacle. He checked his watch, a cheap digital thing that probably came from a pharmacy. Because in 3 hours, my daughter has a coding showcase at her school. She's been working on her project for 2 months. She's 10 years old and it's the first time she's presenting in front of other kids without me standing right next to her. And I promised her that I would be sitting in the front row when she walks up to that microphone. He met Selina's eyes directly, and she felt something shift in the room. So here's my counteroffer, Ms. Vance. I'll fix your systems. I'll save your company. And in return, you'll have me off this property and on the road to Jefferson Elementary School in 2 hours and 45 minutes. Because no deal, not your deal, not anyone's deal, matters more than being there for my daughter when she needs me. The silence that followed was absolute. Selina stared at him. In her entire professional life, no one had ever turned down her money. No one had ever refused her terms. No one had ever looked her in the eye and told her that something else mattered more. She felt something crack in her chest. Not quite respect, not quite rage. Something unfamiliar and deeply uncomfortable. You're serious, she said flatly. Yes, ma'am? You would walk away from $1 million to watch a child's school presentation. Without hesitation. Selina laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. You're either the most principled man I've ever met or the most idiotic. I honestly can't decide which. Miles smiled for the first time. A small, tired smile that suggested he'd heard both assessments before. They're not mutually exclusive, Ms. Vance. She studied him for another moment, this strange man in maintenance coveralls who somehow managed to make her feel like she was the one being evaluated. Then she made a decision. Fine, your terms. Fix my systems, save my launch, and you can run off to your daughter's school event. She stepped closer, her voice hardening. But understand this, Mr. Carter. If you fail, if this is some elaborate waste of my time, I will personally ensure that you never work in this city again. I will burn your professional reputation so thoroughly that you'll be unemployable from here to the Canadian border. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. She turned to Thomas. Give him whatever access he needs. If he wants root access to the mainframe, give it to him. If he wants to rebuild the entire infrastructure from scratch, let him. Mr. Carter has 10 minutes to either save this company or destroy his future. Let's find out which. Thomas looked like he wanted to protest, but one glance at Selina's face killed that impulse. Yes, Ms. Vance. Right away. Miles nodded to Selina, then followed Thomas toward the door. As they left, Victoria leaned in close to Selina's ear. Do you have any idea what you just did? Selina watched Miles disappear down the hallway, that strange crack in her chest widening just slightly. Not even a little bit, she admitted. The server room was a cathedral of technology, row after row of humming machines, blinking lights cascading like digital waterfalls, and enough processing power to run a small country. The temperature was kept at precisely 64 degrees, the humidity controlled to 3 decimal places, and the whole space thrummed with the kind of expensive precision that made Thomas Chen feel like a priest entering his temple. Right now, that temple was showing signs of the apocalypse. Error messages scrolled across monitoring screens in angry red. Status indicators that should have been steady green were flashing amber and crimson. And somewhere in this maze of silicon and fiber optics, something had gone catastrophically wrong. Thomas led Miles to the primary control station, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled up the main diagnostic dashboard. This doesn't make any sense, he muttered, more to himself than to Miles. We run redundancy checks every 6 hours. Our backup system should have kicked in automatically. The whole infrastructure is designed to be fault-tolerant. Miles set down his tool bag, an old canvas thing that had seen better decades, and rolled up his sleeves. May I? Thomas stepped aside, watching with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents. This maintenance worker was about to touch his systems. His systems. The crown jewels of Nexus Technologies, built over years of careful architecture and millions of dollars in development. Miles's fingers moved across the keyboard with unexpected fluidity. He pulled up system logs, network topologies, process monitors, diving through layers of information with the kind of practiced efficiency that made Thomas's professional anxiety spike even higher. Your diagnostic team was looking at packet loss on the external firewall, Miles said, his eyes scanning lines of code that scrolled past at inhuman speed. They thought it was a DDoS attack. Yes, that's our current theory. Thomas leaned over his shoulder, trying to follow the logic. We're seeing massive traffic spikes from multiple IP addresses across. It's not an attack, Miles interrupted. It's a cascade failure in your load balancing algorithm. Someone updated the traffic distribution parameters 2 days ago, probably trying to optimize throughput. But they didn't account for the recursive loop created when your monitoring system tries to compensate for what it perceives as abnormal traffic patterns. He pulled up a section of code that Thomas had personally written 6 months ago. Your monitors see unusual distribution, try to rebalance, which creates more unusual patterns, which triggers more rebalancing, which creates more patterns. It's a feedback loop. The system is basically eating itself. Thomas stared at the screen, his professional pride warring with the sinking realization that Miles was absolutely right. The cascade pattern was there, clear as daylight once you knew where to look. How did you... He started, then stopped. Who are you? Miles didn't answer, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. I need to shut down the load balancer, manually distribute the traffic across your backup servers, and rewrite the monitoring algorithm to break the feedback loop. It's going to cause about 90 seconds of total system downtime, but that's better than the alternative. 90 seconds? Do you have any idea what could happen in 90 seconds? Active transactions, customer data in transit, the live demonstration systems will survive. Miles pulled up a secondary terminal, his hands working across 2 keyboards simultaneously now. I'll redirect active sessions to cached states, buffer any incoming requests, and bring everything back online in sequence. Data integrity will be maintained. Thomas watched, stunned, as Miles orchestrated what should have required a team of 6 engineers and several hours of planning. His fingers moved with absolute precision, no wasted motions, no hesitation. Code scrolled past. Complex, elegant, exactly the kind of battlefield-tested pragmatism that came from years of working under pressure. You've done this before, Thomas said quietly. Miles's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from the screens. Once or twice. Where did you... Time check? Miles interrupted. Thomas glanced at his phone. 7 minutes to launch. Then we should probably focus on that instead of my resume. Miles hit a sequence of keys and suddenly every screen in the server room went black. Thomas's heart stopped. Complete system shutdown. Every nightmare scenario his professional paranoia had ever conjured crystallized into reality. If this didn't work, if Miles had just crashed their entire infrastructure beyond recovery, the silence stretched for 3 seconds. 5. 10. Then, like dawn breaking, the systems began coming back online. Steady green lights replaced angry red. Status indicators stabilized. Process monitors showed healthy, balanced traffic distribution. The endless error scrolling stopped, replaced by clean, normal operational logs. Miles stood back from the terminal, wiping his hands on his coveralls like he'd just finished fixing a leaky pipe instead of saving a multi-million-dollar technology launch. You should run a full diagnostic after the launch, he said calmly. Make sure everything's stable. And you'll want to implement rate limiting on your monitoring system to prevent this from happening again. Thomas stared at him. Who are you? Before Miles could answer, Selena's voice cut through the server room like a knife. That's an excellent question. She stood in the doorway, Victoria close behind her, both of them staring at the now stable monitoring screens with expressions of profound confusion. Ms. Vance, Thomas started. He did it. I don't know how, but he actually... I can see what he did, Thomas. Selena walked into the server room slowly, her heels clicking against the raised floor panels. She moved toward Miles like a predator circling prey, trying to understand what she was looking at. Mr. Carter, you seem to have accidentally saved my company. Yes, ma'am. In under 10 minutes. Yes, ma'am. After my entire IT department and 3 consulting firms said it was impossible. They probably would have figured it out eventually, Ms. Vance. I just had a different perspective. Selina stopped directly in front of him. Up close, without the performance of the boardroom, she could see details she'd missed before, the way his eyes carried weight, like someone who'd seen things he couldn't unsee. The precise, economical way he moved, nothing wasted. The calluses on his hands that spoke of years of physical work. But also, she noticed now, the subtle scarring across his knuckles that suggested something else entirely. Different perspective, she repeated softly. Is that what we're calling it? Miles checked his watch again. Ms. Vance, I kept my end of the agreement. Your systems are stable, your launch will proceed on schedule, and my work here is done. I need to leave now if I'm going to make it to my daughter's school on time. Something about the way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so absolutely unmoved by what he'd just accomplished, made Selina's chest tighten with that unfamiliar feeling again. Not quite yet, Mr. Carter. She moved closer into what most people would consider personal space. We had a deal, remember? I promised you $1 million and a kiss if you succeeded. Miles met her eyes steadily. I told you, I don't want your deal. But I'm a woman of my word. She reached up, her fingers hovering near his collar, close enough to feel the heat of him, but not quite touching. And I'm curious now. What kind of man turns down $1 million to watch a child present a school project? The kind who keeps his promises to his daughter. Even when those promises cost him a fortune? Especially then. Selina felt something dangerous stir in her, not quite attraction, not quite respect, but something in the uncertain space between them. This man was an anomaly. Everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. Everyone could be bought or manipulated or controlled. That was the foundation of her entire worldview, the bedrock principle that had built her empire. And Miles Carter was standing there, calmly dismantling it. She leaned in closer, her lips nearly brushing his ear. You know what I think, Mr. Carter? I think this is all performance. I think you're playing some kind of game, holding out for a better offer. Men always do. Then you've been meeting the wrong men, Ms. Vance. The simplicity of it, the absolute unshakable certainty, made her want to hurt him somehow, to crack that calm, to make him react, to prove that underneath he was just like everyone else. She pressed closer, one hand against his chest now. Prove it, she whispered. Walk away. Right now. Leave the money on the table, leave the recognition, leave everything, and go watch your daughter's school project. Prove you're not just another man pretending to be better than he is. Miles looked at her for a long moment. Then he gently, carefully, removed her hand from his chest. I don't need to prove anything to you, Ms. Vance. I know what I am. The question is, do you know what you are? He stepped back, picked up his tool bag, and nodded to Thomas. The system should be stable now. Good luck with your launch. Then he walked toward the door, leaving Selina standing in the middle of the server room with her hand still raised, feeling like she'd just lost a confrontation she hadn't known she was fighting. Mr. Carter, she called out. He paused, looking back. What are you? The question came out rawer than she'd intended, stripped of pretense or performance. Miles smiled, that same small, tired smile from the boardroom. I'm a father who made a promise, Ms. Vance. That's all you need to know. And then he was gone, leaving Selina Vance, CEO, billionaire, woman who controlled empires, feeling profoundly off balance for the first time in years. Victoria cleared her throat carefully. Selina, the launch starts in 4 minutes. We should... Who is he? Selina interrupted, still staring at the empty doorway. What? Miles Carter. Who is he? Where did he come from? How does a maintenance worker have that level of technical expertise? She turned to Thomas. Pull his employment file. Full background check. I want to know everything. Previous employers, education, military service, if any. Everything. Thomas nodded, already typing on his phone. I'll have it to you by end of day. No, Selina said sharply. Have it to me in an hour, before he leaves the building. Victoria and Thomas exchanged glances. They both knew that tone. Selina Vance had just made something personal. Ms. Vance, Victoria said carefully, the launch will be fine. You heard him. The systems are stable. Selina straightened her suit jacket, reassembling her armor piece by piece. Come on, let's go show 47 million people why Nexus Technologies is about to change the cybersecurity landscape. She walked toward the elevators, Victoria hurrying to keep up. But as they stepped into the executive lift, Selena found herself looking back at the server room one more time. Miles Carter, maintenance worker, father, anomaly. She would figure him out. She always did. Everyone had vulnerabilities. Everyone had weaknesses. Everyone could be understood and ultimately controlled. It was just a matter of finding the right pressure points. What Selena didn't realize yet, what she couldn't possibly understand from her fortress of wealth and power, was that Miles Carter had already seen through her completely. And unlike everyone else in her life, he wasn't impressed. The launch was flawless. Prism rolled out across 6 continents without a single technical glitch, and within the first hour, pre-orders exceeded projections by 40%. The tech press called it revolutionary. Industry analysts predicted Nexus Technologies would gain 15% market share within the year. Stock prices jumped 23 points. Selena stood in the executive observation room, watching the numbers roll in, and felt absolutely nothing. Miles Carter drove an 11-year-old Honda Civic that had seen better decades. The air conditioning worked sporadically. The radio was stuck on 2 stations, and there was a permanent coffee stain on the passenger seat from a morning 3 years ago when Ava had been running late for school. It was the most honest thing he owned. He merged onto I-5, heading south, checking his watch again. 2 hours and 17 minutes until Ava's presentation. Plenty of time if traffic cooperated. He changed out of his work coveralls in the parking garage, now wearing jeans and the flannel shirt Ava had picked out for him last Christmas, dark blue with silver threads that she'd insisted made him look like a dad in a movie. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought better of it. Could be something about Ava. "This is Miles." "Mr. Carter," Selena Vance's voice, somehow even more commanding over the phone. "Congratulations are in order. Your little server room miracle worked. We're already exceeding projections." Miles merged into the right lane, keeping his voice neutral. "I'm glad it worked out, Miss Vance. If there's nothing else." "Where are you?" "On my way to keep a promise." A pause. "Your daughter's school event." "Yes." "Mr. Carter, I need you to turn around and come back to Nexus. I've had my team pull your employment file, and there are some irregularities that we need to discuss." Miles felt ice form in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that make me wonder why someone with your evident technical expertise is working maintenance for $14 an hour. The kind that make me curious about the 5-year gap in your employment history. The kind that—" She paused, and he could hear something shuffling in the background. "The kind that involve military service records that are largely redacted, and a security clearance level that most CIA analysts would envy." There it was. The past, catching up like it always did. "Ms. Vance, my employment history and personal background are my own business. I fixed your servers, you can proceed with your launch, and my part in this story is over. Now, if you'll excuse me—" $1 million, Mr. Carter." He almost laughed. "We've been through this." "Not as payment, as a consulting fee. $1 million plus full medical benefits, plus a college fund for your daughter, plus whatever other terms you want to negotiate. If you come work for me as head of cybersecurity operations." Miles did laugh then, short and sharp. "Ms. Vance, I'm flattered, but what? You'd rather change light bulbs for $14 an hour than use the skills you clearly possess to do work that actually matters?" "Work that matters," Miles repeated softly. "Is that what you call it?" "What would you call it?" "Ms. Vance, I appreciate the offer. I do. But the answer is no. I have a life that works, a daughter who needs stability, and absolutely no interest in stepping back into that world." "What world?" Miles was silent for a moment, watching Seattle's skyline recede in his rearview mirror. "The world where what I'm good at turns into what defines me. Where work becomes mission, and mission becomes obsession, and obsession costs you everything you love. I've been down that road, Ms. Vance. I know where it leads, and I'm not going back." Another pause. When Selena spoke again, her voice had changed, less command, more something else. Curiosity, maybe. "Your daughter, Ava. How old is she?" 10. "And it's just the two of you?" Yes. Her mother died when Ava was 6 months old, complications from a surgery that should have been routine. He said it simply, the way he'd learned to say it, stating facts without drowning in them.
I'm sorry. So am I, Ms. Vance, every day. Which is why I make promises to my daughter and keep them, no matter what.
Which is why I work a job that lets me be at every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every sick day and scared night. Which is why I'm not interested in your offer, no matter how generous it might be. Silence stretched between them. Miles could hear something in the background of Selena's call. Voices, probably her executives celebrating the successful launch. The sound of people who had won something important. You know what I don't understand about you, Mr. Carter? I'm sure there's a lot you don't understand about me, Ms. Vance. Why hide? Why waste yourself in a job that uses maybe 5% of your capabilities? Why not find meaningful work that still allows you to be a good father? Miles thought about how to answer that. About trying to explain to someone like Selena Vance, someone who measured success in stock prices and market dominance, what it meant to measure success in a daughter's laugh, in homework finished without tears, in bedtime stories and Friday night pizza traditions. Because I'm not wasting myself, Ms. Vance. I'm using exactly the parts of myself that matter. The rest, the skills you saw today, the technical expertise, the ability to solve impossible problems under pressure, those are tools I had to learn for a different life. A life that cost me things I'm still paying for. What did it cost you? Everything except Ava. And I'll never risk losing her, not for any amount of money or professional satisfaction or corporate glory. She's all I have left of her mother. She's all I have left of the man I used to be before the work changed me, and I will burn down heaven and hell both before I let that world touch her. The conviction in his voice apparently caught Selena off guard, because the silence that followed lasted almost a full minute. You really mean that, she finally said. Every word. Another pause. Your daughter is lucky to have you. Miles felt something tighten in his throat. No, Ms. Vance, I'm lucky to have her. She's the only thing I've ever done right. That's not true. You saved my company today. Coincidence and timing. I was in the right place with the right skills. That's not virtue, that's circumstance. I disagree. You're entitled to. A longer silence. Miles could practically hear Selena thinking, could sense her trying to find the right angle, the right leverage, the right way to get what she wanted. It was what she did, what made her successful. Everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. Mr. Carter, I'm going to make you one more offer. Ms. Vance, just listen. Come back, right now. Come back to Nexus, accept my job offer, and I will personally ensure that your daughter gets the best educational opportunities money can buy. Private school, Ivy League scholarships, internships at any tech company in the world. I will open every door that exists for her. Miles felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are you trying to bribe me through my daughter? I'm trying to show you that accepting help doesn't make you weak, that providing opportunities for your child doesn't compromise your integrity. By dangling her future in front of me like bait? By offering resources that could change her life. Her life is fine, Ms. Vance. She doesn't need your money or your connections or your version of success. She needs a father who shows up when he promises to, who's there when she's scared, who proves every single day that she matters more than anything else in the world. You can do both. No, Miles said quietly. I can't. I've tried. It doesn't work. The job always wins. The mission always comes first, and the people you love always pay the price. I won't do that to Ava. Not for $1 million, not for 10 million, not for anything. He could hear Selena breathing on the other end of the line, could sense her frustration building. You're afraid, she said finally. Of course I'm afraid. I'm terrified every single day that I'm not enough, that I'm failing her, that she'll grow up and realize I gave her less than she deserved. But I'm more afraid of becoming the kind of father who sacrifices presence for provision, who gives his daughter everything except himself. That's not what I'm asking you to do. Yes, Ms. Vance, it is. You just don't realize it yet because you've never had to choose. You've built your empire, you've achieved your success, and you've never had to sacrifice the things that make you human along the way. You don't know anything about what I've sacrificed. Then I apologize for the assumption. But the answer is still no. Miles heard something in the background of Selena's call. Someone calling her name. Probably Victoria. The launch celebration continuing, the victory being toasted, the corporate machinery grinding forward. "I have to go," Selena said, her voice tight. "But this conversation isn't over, Mr. Carter." "Yes, Ms. Vance, it is. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope your launch exceeds every expectation. But I'm going to go be exactly who I promised to be. A father in the front row, watching his daughter be brave." He disconnected before she could respond. For several miles, Miles drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, his heart rate elevated but controlled. He'd learned a long time ago how to compartmentalize, how to set aside stress and focus on the next objective. Right now, that objective was Ava. His phone buzzed again. A text this time. From Ava. "Dad, are you coming? Maya's mom says traffic is bad and you might be late." Miles smiled despite everything and thumbed a quick response. "Already on my way, kiddo. Front row, center seat, just like I promised. You're going to be amazing." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "I'm so nervous, Dad. What if I mess up?" Miles pulled into a rest stop, needing to give this his full attention. He called her instead of texting back. "Hey, Princess." "Dad!" Ava's voice was high and tight with anxiety. "What if I forget what to say? What if my code doesn't work? What if everyone laughs?" "Take a breath for me," Miles said gently. "Big breath in. That's it. Now let it out slow." He heard her breathing over the phone, could picture her in his mind. 10 years old, dark hair and the braids she'd learned to do herself last month, wearing the purple shirt she'd picked out special for today because purple was her favorite color and also the color of her program's interface. "Better?" he asked. "A little." "Okay. Now listen to me. You've been working on this project for 2 months. You've tested it 47 times. Yes, I've been counting. You know that code better than you know the lyrics to that song you've played 8,000 times in the car." Ava giggled despite her nerves. "It's a good song, Dad." "It's a terrible song, and you have terrible taste. But that's not the point. The point is, you are prepared. You are capable. And even if something goes wrong, even if the code crashes or you forget a line or something unexpected happens, you know how to handle it. Because I taught you the most important thing about being a real programmer." "What's that?" "Real programmers don't write perfect code. Real programmers write code that breaks in interesting ways, and then they fix it. It's not about being perfect, Ava. It's about being brave enough to try, smart enough to adapt, and resilient enough to keep going when things don't work exactly how you planned."
Was silence for a moment, then, "Dad?" "Yeah, Princess?" "How do you always know what to say?" Miles felt his chest tighten with the familiar cocktail of love and terror that came with being solely responsible for another human's emotional development. "I don't, kiddo. I'm making it up as I go, just like everyone else. But I love you enough to try, and that counts for something." "I love you too, Dad. Are you really going to be there?" "Front row, center seat, I promise." "Okay." A deep breath. "I can do this." "I know you can. Now go show those kids how it's done." He could hear her confidence rebuilding, could sense the moment she decided to be brave. "See you in a little bit, Dad." "See you soon, Princess." He sat in the rest stop parking lot for a moment after disconnecting, letting himself feel the weight of what he'd just walked away from. $1 million. Job security. Opportunities for Ava that stretched beyond anything he could provide on $14 an hour. And yet, Miles looked down at his phone, at the lock screen photo of Ava holding up her first completed Python program, grinning like she'd just discovered fire. Taken 6 months ago, right before bedtime, both of them sitting on the worn couch in their small apartment while Ava explained, in exhaustive detail, exactly how her code worked. That moment, that perfectly ordinary, absolutely extraordinary moment of being present with his daughter while she discovered her own capability, that was worth more than any amount of money Selena Vance could offer. Miles pulled back onto the highway, leaving Seattle and Nexus Technologies and Selena Vance's world behind. He had 37 miles to cover and 93 minutes to do it in. He would make it. He always did. Because some promises were worth keeping, no matter what they cost. Back at Nexus Technologies,
Selina stood in her office, staring at the employment file on her desk. Thomas had delivered it 17 minutes after her phone call with Miles ended, and she'd been reading it ever since. Miles Andrew Carter, age 36. Previous employment, United States Army, Cyber Operations Division, rank classified. Received multiple commendations, details redacted. Honorable discharge 5 years ago, circumstances classified. Current employment, Nexus Technologies Facilities Maintenance, hired 3 years ago after standard background check that somehow missed everything interesting. Between military discharge and Nexus employment, a 2-year gap where he'd apparently worked private security, details sparse. Then sudden relocation to Seattle, sudden shift to maintenance work, sudden embrace of a life that used maybe 5% of his evident capabilities. The file didn't say why, but Selina could read between the lines. Something had broken him. Something in that classified military work, those redacted commendations, that honorable discharge that came without explanation. Something had taken a man who was clearly brilliant, a man who could diagnose and repair critical system failures in minutes, who had security clearances that suggested access to state secrets, and convinced him to choose manual labor and single parenthood over everything else. What could do that to a person? Victoria knocked on her office door, already letting herself in without waiting for permission. The board wants to meet tomorrow morning to discuss Prism's launch success. They're talking about accelerating the international rollout. Fine, schedule it. Selina didn't look up from the file. Selina, what are you doing? Research. On the maintenance worker who saved our launch? On the man who turned down $1 million to watch a school presentation? Victoria closed the door carefully and sat across from Selina's desk. Why do you care? It was a good question. Why did she care? Miles Carter was nobody, a facilities worker who'd had a moment of usefulness and then walked away. He was irrelevant to her life, her company, her future. He'd served his purpose. Except, he said no to me, Selina said quietly. So? Nobody says no to me, Victoria. Nobody. When I offer someone $1 million, they take it. When I offer them opportunity, they leap at it. When I offer them everything they could possibly want, they find a way to say yes. She looked up at Victoria. But he said no. Not with regret, not with apology, not with some explanation about how much he wishes he could accept. He just said no. Like it was the easiest thing in the world. Victoria studied her carefully. And that bothers you. It fascinates me. Why? Selina thought about how to articulate it. Because in my entire life, I've never met anyone who couldn't be bought. Not with money, not with power, not with opportunity. Everyone wants something. Everyone has a price. That's the fundamental principle that's driven everything I've built. Identify what people want and give it to them in exchange for what you need. And Miles Carter doesn't have a price. Or his price is something I don't understand how to offer. Selina closed the file. He said, I've never had to sacrifice the things that make me human, that I've built my empire without giving up what matters. That's not true, Victoria said immediately. You've sacrificed everything for this company. Relationships, personal life, any semblance of work-life balance. Have I? Selina interrupted. Or have I just never wanted those things enough to consider them sacrifices? Victoria fell silent. Selina stood, walking to her office windows, looking out over the city that had watched her build everything from nothing. When I was 16 and the state put me in foster care, I promised myself I would never be powerless again, never be at anyone's mercy, never need anyone's charity, never be in a position where someone else could decide my future. And you've kept that promise. Look at what you've built. Yes, look at what I've built. Selina touched the glass, feeling its cold permanence. An empire based on the principle that everyone can be bought. Everyone has a price. Everyone wants something. And now you've met someone who doesn't. Or who wants something I don't know how to give. Selina turned back to Victoria. Cancel my meetings tomorrow afternoon. Selina, cancel them. I need to understand something. Understand what? What it takes to be the kind of person who walks away from everything I'm offering. Selina picked up the file again, looking at Miles Carter's last known address. What it takes to be the kind of person who keeps promises to his daughter at the cost of his own advancement. Victoria stood slowly. This is a bad idea. Probably. You're doing it anyway.
Yes. Why? Selena looked at her oldest friend, her most trusted advisor, and told the truth. Because for the first time in 18 years, someone has made me feel like maybe I don't understand how the world works as well as I thought I did. And that terrifies me. So you're going to, what? Show up at his apartment? Stalk him? I'm going to figure out what I'm missing. What he sees that I don't. What kind of life he's built that's worth more than everything I'm offering. And then what? I don't know yet, Selena admitted, but I need to understand. Because if Miles Carter is right, if there's something more valuable than money and power and success, then I've been building my entire empire on the wrong foundation. Victoria looked at her for a long moment. Or, she said carefully, Miles Carter is just a man who's terrified of his own potential and has convinced himself that poverty and limitation are somehow noble. Maybe. That's what I'm going to find out.
Selena gathered her things, phone, car keys, the file on Miles Carter, and headed for the door. Selena, Victoria called after her. She paused. Be careful. People like Miles Carter, people who can't be bought, they're the most dangerous kind, because you can't control them, and you can't predict them. And when you can't do either of those things, what? They can hurt you in ways you didn't know were possible. Selena smiled, a real smile, without performance or pretense. Good. Maybe it's time someone did. She left her office, her empire, her victory celebration behind, and went hunting for answers in a direction she'd never looked before, toward the kind of life that valued presence over profit, promises over power, and a daughter's school presentation over $1 billion launch. What Selena didn't realize yet was that she wasn't hunting for answers about Miles Carter. She was hunting for answers about herself. And those were always the most dangerous questions to ask. Jefferson Elementary School sat in a neighborhood that real estate agents called transitional, which meant working-class families holding on while developers circled like sharks. The building itself was vintage 1970s educational architecture, brown brick, narrow windows, and a playground that had seen better decades. But inside room 204, something extraordinary was happening. Ava Carter stood at the front of the classroom, her purple shirt bright against the beige walls, her hands trembling slightly as she held the microphone. 30 kids sat in folding chairs, parents lined the back wall, and a projector displayed her program's interface on a pull-down screen that kept trying to roll itself back up. And in the front row, center seat, exactly where he'd promised to be, Miles Carter watched his daughter prepare to be brave. My project is called Safe Space, Ava began, her voice small but steady. It's a program that helps kids report bullying without anyone knowing who reported it. Because sometimes kids see bad things happening, but they're too scared to tell because they think everyone will know it was them. She clicked to the next slide, a flowchart she'd drawn herself, mapping out the anonymous reporting system. Miles felt his chest swell with pride so fierce it almost hurt. The program uses encryption, Ava continued, gaining confidence now. That means it scrambles the information so nobody can tell who sent it. And it sends the report to 3 different adults, a teacher, a counselor, and the principal. So if one person doesn't do anything, the other ones will know too. A hand went up. What if someone lies? What if they report something fake just to get someone in trouble? Ava had prepared for this question. Miles had helped her think through all the possible challenges. That's a good question. The program keeps a record of all reports, even the scrambled ones. So if someone keeps making fake reports, the pattern will show up. And if something turns out to be fake, the adults can work together to figure it out. But the point is that real reports don't get ignored just because kids are scared. Miles watched his daughter field questions, watched her explain her code's logic, watched her demonstrate the interface she'd built through 60 hours of trial and error. She stumbled once, a nervous giggle when the demo froze, but recovered quickly, exactly like he'd taught her. Real programmers adapt. When she finished, the applause was genuine and sustained. Ava's teacher, Mrs. Chen, pulled her aside afterward, talking animatedly about submitting the project to a regional youth technology competition. Maya's mom, the one who'd texted about traffic, caught Miles's eye and gave him a thumbs up. Miles felt something settle in his chest. That particular satisfaction that came from keeping promises that mattered. This moment, watching Ava glow with the pride of accomplishment, seeing her realize that her work had value, this was worth more than anything Selena Vance could have offered. He waited until Ava had finished talking with her teacher, until the other families had filtered out, until it was just the two of them in the emptying classroom. So? He asked, opening his arms. Ava crashed into him, wrapping her arms around his waist. I did it, Dad. I really did it. You really did. I'm so proud of you, Princess. She pulled back, looking up at him with eyes that were so much like her mother's it sometimes stole his breath. Were you nervous for me? Terrified. But I knew you could handle it. Even when the demo froze? Especially then. That's when you proved you're a real programmer. You adapted, you problem-solved, you kept going. That's the hard part, Ava. Anyone can write code that works in perfect conditions. Real skill is handling the moments when everything goes wrong. Ava considered this, then nodded seriously. Mrs. Chen thinks I should enter the competition. What do you think? I think I want to, but I'll need to make the program better first, add more features, test it more, make sure it really works. Miles smiled. Then that's what we'll do. We'll spend every night this week improving it, testing it, making it bulletproof. Deal? Deal? Ava grabbed her backpack, already talking through improvements as they walked toward the parking lot. And maybe I could add a feature where kids can report good things too, like if they see someone being nice or helping someone. Because Mrs. Chen says positive reinforcement is important. Miles listened, offering suggestions when asked, mostly just letting Ava's enthusiasm carry the conversation. This was what mattered. This moment, this relationship, this small life they'd built together in the wreckage of loss and grief. They were almost to the car when Miles noticed the vehicle parked 3 spaces down. A silver Aston Martin that cost more than he'd earned in the past 3 years combined. Selena Vance sat in the driver's seat, watching them through the windshield with an expression Miles couldn't quite read. His first instinct was anger. She'd followed him, invaded the one space he'd kept separate from that world. But Ava noticed his tension immediately. Dad, what's wrong? Nothing, Princess. Just someone from work. He kept his voice steady, casual. Go ahead and get in the car. I need to talk to them for a minute. Ava followed his gaze to the Aston Martin, her eyes widening. Whoa, that's a really nice car. Yeah, really expensive too. Now get in, buckle up, and start thinking about what you want for dinner. Pizza? We had pizza last Friday. Pizza is good every Friday. Miles laughed despite the situation. We'll discuss it. Now go on. He waited until Ava was safely in the Honda, then walked over to the Aston Martin. Selena rolled down the window, and Miles leaned against the doorframe, keeping his voice low and controlled. Miss Vance, what are you doing here? Watching you keep a promise. She gestured toward the school building. That's your daughter, Ava? Yes. And you need to leave, now. I'm parked on a public street, Mr. Carter. You followed me to my daughter's school. That's not research, that's stalking. Selena had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I wanted to understand. Understand what? What kind of man turns down everything I offered? What kind of life you've built that's worth more than $1 million? She paused. What makes a daughter's school presentation matter more than saving a company? Miles looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. Beneath the designer clothes and perfect makeup and carefully constructed armor, Selena Vance looked lost. You want to understand? He asked quietly. Yes? Then answer a question for me. When was the last time someone needed you to show up for them? Not for business, not for networking, not because you could do something for them. Just needed you to be there? Selena was silent for a long moment. I don't think anyone ever has. Then you have your answer, Ms. Vance. That's the difference between your world and mine. In my world, promises matter more than profit. Presence matters more than power. And being there for one person who loves you matters more than being successful for millions who don't. He straightened up, preparing to leave, but Selena spoke again. Teach me. Miles stopped. What? Teach me. Show me how it works. Your world, your priorities, your life.
She fumbled for words, which seemed deeply unfamiliar for her. I've spent 18 years building an empire based on certain principles. And then you walked into my boardroom and demonstrated that maybe those principles are incomplete. So teach me what I'm missing. Ms. Vance, Selena, please. The vulnerability in her voice was startling. I'm not here to offer you money or opportunities or anything you don't want. I'm here because you made me question everything I thought I understood about success. And I need to know if you're right. If there's something I've been sacrificing without realizing it. Miles glanced back at his car, where Ava was waiting. He should say no. Should send Selena back to her world and keep his life separate, safe, uncomplicated. But there was something in her eyes, a genuine hunger for understanding, that reminded him of Ava asking questions about the world, trying to figure out how things fit together. And Miles had never been good at turning away people who genuinely wanted to learn. One dinner, he said finally. You, me, and Ava. Tomorrow night. We order pizza, we sit at a table that costs $20 at a garage sale, and you see what normal looks like. Then you go back to your empire and you never follow me to my daughter's school again. Deal? Selena smiled, a real smile, without calculation or performance. Deal. And Ms. Vance, if you hurt my daughter, if you treat her like a curiosity or a poverty case or anything other than a person worthy of respect, I will make it my life's mission to ensure you regret it. Are we clear? Crystal. Miles nodded and walked back to his car, feeling like he'd just made either the best decision or the worst mistake of his life. Time would tell which. Ava looked up from her phone as he got in. Who is that? Someone from work who wants to understand something. What does she want to understand? Miles started the engine, pulling out of the parking lot. What makes pizza on Friday nights more valuable than a billion-dollar company? Ava considered this. That's easy. Pizza is delicious, and Friday nights are for family. Exactly right, Princess. Exactly right. The next evening, Selena stood outside Miles's apartment building, experiencing something deeply unfamiliar, uncertainty about what to wear. She'd changed clothes 3 times, rejecting the designer suit as too formal, the casual dress as trying too hard, the jeans and sweater as too calculated in their casualness. She'd finally settled on simple black pants and a gray blouse, minimal jewelry, and shoes she could actually walk in. The building was in a neighborhood that probably looked better in daylight. 4 stories, exterior stairs, the kind of place where people hung laundry on balconies and kids rode bikes in the parking lot. Selena checked the address Miles had texted, apartment 3B, and climbed the stairs, carrying a bottle of wine that suddenly seemed absurdly inappropriate. She knocked before she could overthink it further. Miles opened the door barefoot, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that said, "World's Okayest Dad," in faded letters. Behind him, Selena could see a small living room, worn couch, secondhand coffee table, walls decorated with Ava's artwork and photographs. It looked like a home. Ms. Vance, right on time. Selena, please. She held up the wine awkwardly. I brought this, but I realize now that it's probably expensive and unnecessary. Miles smiled, taking the bottle. Yeah, probably, but thanks anyway. Come in. Selena stepped into a space that was probably a quarter the size of her home office. The kitchen was visible from the living room, separated by a counter with 3 mismatched stools. Ava sat at a small dining table, working on something on a laptop that had definitely seen better years. Ava, this is Selena Vance. She's the CEO of the company where I work. Selena, this is my daughter Ava. Ava looked up, studying Selena with the kind of direct, unfiltered assessment that only children could pull off. You're the one with the fancy car. Selena felt herself being evaluated and found the experience surprisingly uncomfortable. Yes, that's me. Dad says you want to understand why pizza nights matter. I do. Ava considered this, then shrugged. Okay, but you have to help with toppings. We have rules. Rules? Miles brought over plates from the kitchen, mismatched, chipped in places, but clean. Rule 1. Everyone gets to choose 1 topping for their section. Rule 2. No complaining about anyone else's choices, even if they're objectively terrible. My choices aren't terrible, Ava protested. Pineapple is a legitimate pizza topping. Pineapple is a crime against Italian cuisine, Miles shot back, but he was grinning. What do you like on your pizza, Selena? Ava asked. Selena realized she hadn't actually ordered her own pizza in years. Her assistant handled food, corporate catering provided meals during long workdays, and business dinners happened at restaurants where she barely touched the food. I don't really know. What do you recommend? Ava's eyes lit up. Well, I like pineapple and ham. Dad likes mushrooms and peppers, which is boring, but whatever. And we always get half plain cheese for guests because Mom used to say that's polite. The casual reference to Ava's mother, spoken without sadness or weight, just as a fact about how things were, made something in Selena's chest tighten. Plain cheese sounds perfect, she said.
They ordered from a place called Mario's that apparently knew their order by heart. Miles just said the usual plus a third cheese section, and the person on the other end confirmed the address without asking. While they waited, Ava showed Selena her safe space program, explaining the code's logic with the kind of patient enthusiasm usually reserved for favorite topics. See, this part here handles the encryption, Ava said, pointing to a block of code. Dad helped me understand how to implement it. The hard part was making sure the message could be read by the adults but not traced back to the sender. Selena leaned closer, genuinely interested. That's sophisticated work for a 10-year-old. Ava's been coding since she was 7, Miles said from the kitchen, where he was setting out napkins and drinks. Started with Python basics, worked her way up. She's better than most professionals I've worked with. Dad's exaggerating, but I am pretty good. Ava said it matter-of-factly, without false modesty or arrogance. What made you want to build this particular program? Selena asked. Ava's expression became more serious. Because my friend Maya got bullied last year. Really bad. And she was scared to tell anyone because the bullies said they'd make it worse if she told. By the time a teacher noticed, Maya was crying every day before school. That must have been difficult to watch. It was the worst, and I kept thinking there should be a way to help that doesn't put kids in danger, so I built one. She clicked to another screen. I'm working on improvements now. Maybe add a feature where kids can report good things too, not just bad ones. Positive reinforcement, you know? That's actually brilliant, Selena said slowly. Have you thought about scaling it? Making it available to other schools? Ava looked at Miles, uncertain. He came over, resting a hand on her shoulder. Right now, we're focused on making it work really well for one school, he said carefully. Getting the features right, testing thoroughly, making sure it actually helps. Then maybe we'll think about expanding. But Ava's 10. She doesn't need to be running a tech startup just yet. Selena heard the gentle warning in his voice. Don't turn my daughter into a business opportunity. She nodded. That makes sense. Quality over expansion. The pizza arrived and they migrated to the small table. Selena found herself wedged between Miles and Ava, eating pizza that was honestly pretty good, while Ava explained the intricacies of her school's social dynamics, and Miles interjected corrections to what he called the dramatic retelling. It was chaotic and warm, and completely unlike any dinner Selena had experienced in years. Nobody discussed quarterly earnings or market strategy or competitive positioning. Nobody checked their phones every 30 seconds or cut the meal short for more important meetings. They just existed together in a moment that had no purpose beyond itself. So Selena, Ava said, expertly removing a strand of cheese from her third slice, what's it like being a CEO? It's complicated, Selena said carefully, aware that she was talking to a 10-year-old. I spend a lot of time solving problems and making decisions. What kind of problems? Technical problems, business problems, people problems, figuring out how to make the company successful. Do you like it? The question caught Selena off guard. Did she like it? She'd spent so long defining herself by her success that she'd never really considered whether she enjoyed the actual work. I'm good at it, she said finally. That's not the same thing, Ava observed. Miles coughed slightly, hiding a smile. Ava, maybe let Ms. Vance eat her pizza. No, it's fine, Selena said. She's right. Being good at something isn't the same as liking it. I guess I've just never thought about the difference. Why not? Because when you grow up without much, you learn to focus on survival first and satisfaction second. I became good at business because it meant I'd never be powerless again. Whether I enjoyed it seemed less important than whether it worked. Ava considered this seriously. But you're not powerless now. You're like super powerful. So maybe now you can think about the enjoying part. Selena looked at this 10-year-old girl who somehow cut straight through 18 years of carefully constructed justification and felt something shift in her chest. Maybe you're right. After dinner, Ava insisted on showing Selena her room, a small space with a twin bed, a desk covered in electronics projects, and walls plastered with posters of scientists and programmers. Ada Lovelace next to Grace Hopper next to Katherine Johnson. These are my heroes, Ava explained. Women who changed everything with code and math and not caring that people said they couldn't.
They're excellent choices, Selena said softly, thinking about her own journey, her own fights against people who'd said she couldn't. Who are your heroes? Ava asked. Selena opened her mouth to answer, then realized she didn't have one. She'd been so focused on becoming powerful herself that she'd never stopped to identify who she was trying to emulate. I'm not sure I have any, she admitted. That's sad, Ava said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Everyone should have heroes. They help you remember why you're trying to be better. Miles appeared in the doorway. Ava, bedtime in 30 minutes. Let Ms. Vance breathe. Dad, I'm showing her important things. I know, Princess, but Ms. Vance probably needs to get going soon. Selena did need to leave. She had early meetings, investor calls, a dozen urgent items waiting. But for the first time she could remember, she didn't want to. The small apartment with its secondhand furniture and handmade decorations felt more real than her entire glass and steel empire. Actually, she said impulsively, could I stay for bedtime? I promise not to intrude. I'd like to see the whole routine, if that's okay. Miles looked surprised, but nodded. It's not exciting, just teeth brushing, pajamas, and a chapter from whatever book we're reading. That sounds perfect. 20 minutes later, Selena found herself sitting on Ava's bed while Miles read from a book about a girl who discovered she could talk to computers. Ava was in astronaut pajamas, her head resting against Miles's shoulder, her eyes starting to droop despite her obvious effort to stay awake. Miles read in different voices for different characters, made Ava laugh with deliberate dramatic interpretations, and somehow made the simple act of reading a bedtime story feel like the most important job in the world. When Ava's eyes finally closed, Miles carefully extracted himself and pulled the blanket up to her chin. He kissed her forehead gently. Love you, Princess, he whispered. Love you too, Dad, Ava mumbled, already half asleep. Selena followed Miles back to the living room, feeling like she'd just witnessed something sacred. Coffee, Miles offered, moving to the kitchen. Please. They sat on the worn couch, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, and Selena felt the full weight of what she'd just experienced settling over her. You do that every night? She asked quietly. Every single night. Sometimes we're both exhausted, sometimes I'm half asleep myself, sometimes Ava fights bedtime like it's a personal offense. But yeah, every night, reading, talking, being present. It's the promise I made when her mother died, that I would show up for every moment, no matter what. That's why you turned down my offer. That's part of it. But it's bigger than just bedtime routines or school presentations. It's about choosing a life where my daughter knows, truly knows, that she matters more than anything else. More than money, more than career, more than any external definition of success. Selena set down her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. I don't think anyone has ever chosen me like that. Ever. Miles looked at her carefully. What happened to you, Selena? And somehow, in this small apartment with this man who barely knew her, Selena felt safe enough to tell the truth. My parents died when I was 16. House fire. I was at a friend's house. They were sleeping. By the time the fire department arrived, she paused, swallowing hard. Afterward, I went into state care. Got bounced between foster homes. Some okay, some terrible. Learned pretty quickly that the only person I could count on was myself. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. What changed things was deciding I would never be powerless again, never be dependent on anyone's charity or kindness or mercy. I would build something so strong, so successful, that no one could ever hurt me again. And did it work?
Selena laughed, sharp and humorless. I built $1 billion company. I have more money than I can spend in 3 lifetimes. I have power, influence, respect. So yes, it worked. But I sat at dinner tonight with you and your daughter, and I realized I don't have anything real. I have employees who fear me, executives who pretend to like me, and business associates who smile while calculating how to use me. I don't have anyone who needs me just to show up and be present. I don't have anyone who loves me without agenda. Miles was quiet for a moment. You could, though. Could what? Have that. Build that. It's not too late. Isn't it? Selena looked at him, feeling more vulnerable than she had in years. I'm 34 years old, Miles. I've spent 18 years becoming someone who measures success in quarterly earnings and market domination. I don't know how to be any other way. So learn. You're clearly capable of learning. You built an empire from nothing. Apply that same drive to building a life instead of just a career. I wouldn't even know where to start. Miles smiled. Start small. Start with one person, one moment, one promise kept. You can't change everything overnight, but you can change something. And something is better than nothing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking coffee, existing in a moment without purpose or agenda. Selena found herself noticing details. The way Miles's apartment smelled like old books and fresh laundry, the soft sound of Ava's breathing from her bedroom, the complete absence of the ambient anxiety that usually filled her life. Thank you, she said finally, for letting me see this, for teaching me what I was missing. You're welcome, though I'm not sure I taught you anything. I think you already knew. You were just looking for permission to admit it. Selena stood, gathering her things. I should go. Early meetings tomorrow. Miles walked her to the door, then paused. Selena, one more thing. Yes? You asked what makes pizza nights more valuable than $1 billion company. The answer isn't the pizza. It's not even the specific tradition. It's the choice to prioritize presence over productivity, people over profit, moments over metrics. That's what I've built here with Ava. Not a perfect life, not an easy life, but a real one, where we show up for each other even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. Selena nodded, unable to trust her voice. You can build that too, Miles continued gently. It'll mean making different choices, maybe walking away from some things you've built, but it's possible, if you want it badly enough. I'm not sure I'm brave enough. Says the woman who built a tech empire from nothing. I think you're braver than you know. Selena left the apartment, walking down the exterior stairs to where her Aston Martin waited, suddenly garish and ridiculous in this neighborhood of practical cars and modest lives. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, not starting the engine, just processing everything she'd experienced. She'd walked into that apartment expecting to understand what Miles had that made him turn down her offer. She'd left understanding what she lacked that made the offer meaningless. Presence. Connection. Someone who needed her to show up just for the sake of being there. She'd built an empire, but forgotten to build a life. The question was, could she change? Could someone who'd spent 18 years armoring herself against vulnerability suddenly learn to do the opposite? Could she unlearn the lessons that had made her successful and learn new ones that might make her human? Selena pulled out her phone, looking at her calendar. Meetings, conference calls, investor presentations, all carefully orchestrated to maximize efficiency and minimize personal connection. Her entire life formatted into 30-minute blocks of productivity. On impulse, she called Victoria. Selena? It's almost 10. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to clear my schedule tomorrow afternoon. Again? What's going on? I'm doing research, Selena said, looking back up at Miles's apartment window where a light still glowed. Into alternate definitions of success. That sounds ominous. Or hopeful. I'm not sure yet. Selena started the car. Clear the afternoon. I'll explain tomorrow. She disconnected before Victoria could ask more questions and drove back toward downtown Seattle, toward her penthouse apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer everything and perfect, terrible emptiness. But this time, instead of feeling satisfied by her success, she felt something different. She felt lonely. And for the first time in 18 years, she wondered if maybe that was something she should fix. What Selena didn't realize yet was that Miles Carter had just cracked open a door she'd welded shut years ago. The door between who she was and who she might become. And once that door opened, even slightly, it was impossible to close it again. The question wasn't whether she would change. The question was whether she would survive the transformation, or whether the empire she'd built would collapse when she stopped holding it together with sheer force of will and started asking what she actually wanted from life instead of what she needed to prove. Those were different questions, and the answers would cost her everything she'd built, or give her everything she'd been missing. Time would tell which. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Selena spent the next 3 weeks oscillating between her old patterns and something new, something uncertain. She showed up at board meetings with the same ruthless efficiency, closed a major acquisition deal that had her competitors scrambling, and gave an interview to Forbes that painted her as the kind of visionary leader who ate obstacles for breakfast. But she also started leaving work at 6 instead of 9, started declining evening networking events, started sitting alone in her penthouse, eating takeout, and wondering what the hell she was doing with her life. Victoria noticed first. "You're different," she said one afternoon, standing in Selena's office doorway with a tablet full of quarterly projections. Distracted, present but not present. "What's going on?" Selena looked up from her computer where she'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes without actually seeing it. "Do you have anyone who needs you, Victoria? Not professionally, not because you're useful, just needs you to show up?" Victoria blinked. "Where is this coming from?" "Answer the question." "My sister calls me when she fights with her husband. Does that count?" "And do you go?" "Sometimes, when I can fit it in." "When you can fit it in," Selena repeated softly. "Not because she needs you, but when it's convenient for your schedule." Victoria set down the tablet, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Selena, what happened at that maintenance worker's apartment? You've been different ever since. I saw what a real life looks like, what it means to prioritize people over productivity. And now I can't stop thinking about how many years I've spent building something impressive instead of something meaningful. Your company is meaningful. We employ 4,000 people. We're revolutionizing cybersecurity. We're making the digital world safer for millions of users. And when I'm 80 years old and looking back, will any of that matter as much as someone sitting at my bedside, holding my hand because they love me and not because I pay them?" Selena stood, pacing to her windows. "I watched Miles read his daughter a bedtime story, Victoria. That's it. That's all it was. And it felt more real than anything I've accomplished in 18 years. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "So what are you going to do?" "I have no idea." 2 days later, Selena found herself doing something she'd sworn she'd never do, standing outside Jefferson Elementary School again, this time with explicit permission. She'd called Miles the night before, her voice uncertain in ways that still felt foreign. "I want to sponsor Ava's tech program," she'd said, "not as charity, not as some grand gesture. I want to do something that matters to someone who matters. Is that okay?" Miles had been silent for so long she'd thought he'd hung up. Then, "What does sponsoring mean exactly?" "Equipment upgrades, software licenses, maybe funding for the regional competition if Ava wants to enter." "I'm not trying to buy my way into your life, Miles. I'm trying to figure out how to use what I have in ways that actually help people instead of just making my balance sheet look better." Another long pause. "Let me talk to Ava. If she's comfortable with it, then okay." Now Selena stood in the school's computer lab, watching Ava and 5 other kids explore the new laptops and software packages that had arrived that morning. The total cost was barely a rounding error in Nexus Technologies' quarterly budget, but the kids acted like she'd delivered Christmas early. "This is the professional version," one boy said, his eyes wide as he scrolled through features. "My dad says this costs like $1,000. More like $1,500, another kid corrected. "My cousin's company uses it." Ava looked up at Selena, her expression serious. "This is really nice of you, Ms. Vance, but Dad says when people give you expensive things, they usually want something back. What do you want?" The directness of it made Selena smile despite herself. She crouched down so she was at eye level with Ava. "You know what I want? I want to watch you and your friends build amazing things.
I want to see what happens when kids who are brilliant get access to tools that match their potential. That's it. No strings, no expectations, no agenda. Really? Really. Though I wouldn't complain if you kept me updated on your safe space improvements. I'm genuinely curious how the project evolves. Ava considered this, then stuck out her hand for a formal handshake. Deal. We'll send you monthly reports. Monthly reports, Selena repeated, amused. Very professional. Dad says if you're going to do something, do it right. They shook on it, and Selena felt something warm settle in her chest. This was different from closing a business deal or signing a major contract. This was helping someone without expecting return on investment, without calculating strategic advantage, without any motive beyond wanting to see a 10-year-old girl succeed. Miles appeared in the doorway, still in his work coveralls, and caught Selena's eye. He nodded once, acknowledgement, maybe approval, and Selena felt absurdly pleased by his reaction. After the kids returned to their projects, Miles walked her out to the parking lot. That was a good thing you did, he said simply. It was easy. Too easy, actually. Makes me wonder why I haven't been doing things like this all along. Because you've been focused on building an empire. That takes different priorities. Selena leaned against her car, feeling the afternoon sun warm on her face. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you do it? How did you walk away from whatever life you had before and choose this one? Because I'm starting to understand what I'm missing, but I have no idea how to get from where I am to where you are. Miles looked out over the school playground, where kids were running and screaming with the kind of unselfconscious joy that adults forgot how to access. I didn't walk away because I wanted to. I walked away because I had to, because the work I was doing was eating me alive, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. And when Ava's mother died, I realized I had a choice. Keep being that person and lose my daughter too, or burn it all down and start over. What kind of work were you doing? Miles's jaw tightened. The kind that matters on paper and destroys you in practice. The kind that requires you to make impossible choices and live with the consequences. The kind that convinces you that serving a greater good justifies personal sacrifice. Until one day you wake up and realize you've sacrificed everything that made you human. Military work. Yeah, cyber operations specifically. Nation-state level threats, critical infrastructure defense, things I still can't talk about without violating a dozen security clearances. He looked at her directly. I was good at it, Selena. Really good. And that made it worse because every success meant they needed me for the next mission, and the next, and the next. Until I was working 100-hour weeks, sleeping in server rooms, and missing every important moment in my life because the mission always came first. What changed? Ava's mother, Rebecca, died 3 months after I'd missed our anniversary, her birthday, and 2 of Ava's doctor appointments because I was in some classified location fixing some critical problem. I got the call in the middle of an operation briefing. By the time I made it to the hospital, she was already gone. His voice cracked slightly. And Ava, 6 months old, crying in a hospital nursery, had no idea her mother was dead, and her father had chosen work over being there. Selena felt tears threatening and fought them back. Miles, I'm so sorry. I made a choice that day. I told my commanding officer I was done. Finished my current obligations, got my honorable discharge, and walked away from everything that had defined me. Took Ava, moved to Seattle, and found work that let me be present. Really present, not just physically there while my mind was elsewhere. And maintenance work was the answer? Maintenance work was the reset button. It's honest, it's straightforward, and it ends when the shift ends. I fix things that are broken. I go home to my daughter, and I sleep without dreaming about critical infrastructure failures or nation-state cyber attacks. Is it what I'm best at? No, but it's what I need to do to be the father Ava deserves. Selena absorbed this, understanding clicking into place. That's why you turned down my offer. It wasn't just about the money or the job. It was about not going back to the person you used to be. Exactly, because that person was brilliant and capable and utterly destroyed by his own competence. And I won't risk becoming him again, not for anything. They stood in silence for a moment, and Selena felt the weight of what Miles had shared settling over her. He'd made the hardest choice imaginable, walking away from everything he was good at because being good at it was killing him. Could she do the same?
Could she walk away from Nexus Technologies, from the empire she'd built, from the identity she'd constructed over 18 years? I don't know if I'm that brave, she admitted. You don't have to walk away completely. That was my path, not necessarily yours. But you do have to make choices, Selena. You have to decide what matters more, the empire or the life, the success or the connection. And you have to live with those choices every single day. What if I make the wrong choice? Miles smiled. Then you make a different choice tomorrow. That's the secret nobody tells you. You're not making one big decision that defines everything. You're making 1,000 small decisions every day about where your attention goes and what you prioritize. String enough of those small decisions together, and eventually they become a life. Selena's phone buzzed. Victoria, with the 6th urgent message of the afternoon. Board meeting in an hour. Investor call immediately after. Crisis in the European division requiring immediate attention. The machinery of her empire demanding she return and tend to it. She silenced the phone without reading the rest. Can I ask you one more favor? She said. Depends what it is. Teach me how to make those small decisions. Not through advice or philosophy, but through practice. Let me see how you actually do it. The daily choices, the moment-to-moment prioritization. I need to understand it in practice, not just theory. Miles studied her carefully. You're asking to shadow my life? I'm asking to learn from someone who's figured out something I haven't. Is that too strange? It's definitely strange, but okay. Saturday. You, me, and Ava. Full day of normal life. Fair warning, though. Normal life is spectacularly boring by your standards. I'm counting on it. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, Seattle weather at its most persistently damp. Selena showed up at Miles's apartment at 8, wearing jeans that had cost more than most people's monthly car payments, but at least looked relatively normal. Miles answered the door in sweatpants and an old Marines t-shirt, holding a cup of coffee, and looking significantly less awake than she'd expected. Morning, he mumbled. Ava's still sleeping. Kids' theater of the morning routine starts in about 20 minutes. Kids' theater? You'll see. Selena followed him into the kitchen, accepting coffee in the same mismatched mug from her first visit. The apartment looked lived in ways her penthouse never did. Dishes in the sink, Ava's homework spread across the counter, a basket of laundry waiting to be folded. Evidence of actual human habitation instead of designer perfection. So, what's the plan for today? She asked. Miles checked a handwritten list stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a robot. Grocery shopping, library run. Ava's friend Maya is coming over this afternoon for a study session, and we need to fix the leak under the bathroom sink. Thrilling stuff. Sounds perfect. Right on schedule, Ava emerged from her bedroom, shuffling toward them with her hair in complete disarray and wearing pajamas inside out. She stopped when she saw Selena, blinked twice, then continued to the refrigerator. There's a strange lady in our kitchen, she announced to Miles. That's Ms. Vance. We talked about this. Right, the CEO lady who wants to learn about normal life. Ava retrieved orange juice, drank directly from the container, and ignored Miles's disapproving look. Why? Because I'm curious how your dad manages everything so well. Ava considered this while chewing a piece of toast she'd materialized from somewhere. He doesn't manage everything well. Last week he forgot to buy milk 3 times. And he puts the laundry in the dryer but forgets to turn the dryer on, so the clothes just sit there getting weird smells. Ava, Miles said warningly. What? You said we should be honest with guests. Selena laughed, genuinely delighted. I appreciate the honesty. An hour later, they were at the grocery store, and Selena was experiencing retail shopping for the first time in years. She'd forgotten that normal people navigated crowded aisles, compared prices, used coupons clipped from newspapers. Her world had become so insulated. Assistants handled household needs, corporate catering provided meals, restaurants delivered anything else, that she'd lost touch with the practical mechanics of daily life. This brand is cheaper, but that brand tastes better, Ava explained, pointing at pasta sauce options. So we get the cheaper one, and Dad adds extra garlic and basil to make it taste like the expensive one. Smart, Selena said. It's called being broke, Ava said cheerfully. Dad says there's no shame in it, as long as we're smart about money. Miles appeared with a cart half full of practical items. Nothing processed or convenient, mostly raw ingredients that would require actual cooking. Ava, grab 2 cans of tomatoes and check if the store brand is on sale. On it. Selena watched this choreographed dance of practical domesticity, Miles and Ava moving through the store with practiced efficiency, making decisions based on price per ounce calculations and meal planning. It was so far removed from her world of expense accounts and corporate cards that it felt almost anthropological. "You do this every week?" she asked Miles. "Every Saturday, sometimes twice if we run out of essentials midweek." He compared prices on chicken breasts, chose the family pack because it was more economical, and added it to the cart. "It's not glamorous, but it works." "And Ava helps with all of this?" "Ava helps with everything. Cooking, cleaning, budgeting, planning. She's part of this family, which means she's part of maintaining it. Real life isn't something you do for kids, it's something you do with them." They moved to Produce, where Miles taught Selena how to pick ripe avocados and explained why buying whole vegetables and cutting them yourself saved significant money over pre-cut options. Ava contributed running commentary about which vegetables were gross, which ones were acceptable under duress, and which ones she'd actually eat without complaint. At checkout, Miles used a combination of coupons, a store loyalty card, and careful calculation to bring the total down. The final amount, $83 for a full week of groceries, was less than Selena typically spent on a single business lunch. "How do you make $83 feed 2 people for a week?" she asked as they loaded bags into Miles's trunk. "Practice, planning, and creativity. Bulk proteins, versatile vegetables, staple ingredients that can become different meals. It's not hard once you learn the rhythm." The library was next, and Selena found herself in a place she hadn't visited since college. Ava moved through the stacks with the confidence of regular patronage, pulling books on advanced programming concepts, a fantasy novel her friend had recommended, and a biography of Margaret Hamilton. "Who's Margaret Hamilton?" Selena asked. Ava looked at her like she'd just admitted to not knowing what computers were. "Only the software engineer who wrote the code for the Apollo moon landing. She invented the term software engineering. She's literally one of the most important computer scientists ever." "Sorry, I should have known that." "It's okay. Lots of people don't know about the women who built technology. That's why I'm reading all their stories, so I don't forget that women have always been doing this work, even when people tried to make us invisible." Miles ruffled her hair affectionately. "That's my girl, fighting historical erasure one library book at a time." They checked out their books. "Free," Selena noted, in stark contrast to the $500 textbook she'd bought in business school, and headed back to the apartment. Maya arrived shortly after, a bright-eyed 10-year-old who immediately dragged Ava into deep conversation about their upcoming coding competition. Selena found herself sitting at the kitchen table with Miles, ostensibly helping him plan the week's meals, but mostly just watching him work. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking what ingredients they had, mapping out 5 dinners, leaving 2 nights for leftovers, building a system that balanced nutrition with Ava's preferences and their budget constraints. "You're really good at this," she observed. "I've had 5 years of practice. The first year after Rebecca died was chaos. Takeout every night, no routine, just barely keeping our heads above water. But eventually I figured out that structure helps. Plans help. Having systems means less daily stress." "Like, is that what you meant about small decisions? Building systems that make the right choices automatic?" "Exactly. I can't decide every morning what's for breakfast or when laundry gets done. So I built routines, grocery shopping Saturdays, laundry Wednesdays, meal prep Sundays. The structure creates space for the moments that actually matter." "Like bedtime stories." "Like bedtime stories, like homework help, like Ava telling me about her day while we cook dinner together. Those moments don't happen by accident. They happen because everything else is handled by routine." Selena thought about her own life, how she'd built routines around productivity and success, but never around connection or presence. Her mornings were optimized for getting to work faster. Her evenings were structured around networking and advancing her career. She'd systematized efficiency but never meaning. "I don't think I have any routines that matter," she said quietly. "Then build new ones. Start small. One thing you want to prioritize, one routine that supports it. String together enough of those and eventually you have a different life." Maya's excited voice carried from Ava's room. "Wait, You added user authentication? That's so cool. Can you show me the code? Miles smiled, listening to the sound of his daughter teaching her friend. That's what success sounds like in my world. Not stock prices or quarterly earnings, just my kid sharing what she's learned with someone who's excited to learn it. That's beautiful, Selena said, and meant it. The afternoon passed in a blur of ordinary moments. Miles fixing the bathroom sink while Ava and Maya tested code, everyone helping with dinner preparation, laughter over a movie none of them had seen before. Selena kept waiting for boredom to set in, for her usual restlessness to demand something more stimulating. It never came. Instead, she felt something she couldn't quite name, a settling, a quieting, a sense that maybe life didn't need to be constantly impressive to be valuable. Maybe ordinary moments, strung together with intention and care, were actually what mattered most. When Maya's mother picked her up around 6, Selena helped Miles clean up the kitchen while Ava finished her homework at the table. "Thank you for today," Selena said, washing dishes at a sink that had probably been installed in the 1990s. "I know it was probably weird having me here." "It was weird," Miles agreed, drying plates with a towel that had seen better years. "But good weird. You're asking the right questions, Selena. You're trying to learn. That counts for something." "I don't know what to do with what I'm learning, though. I can't just walk away from Nexus. 4,000 employees depend on that company. Millions of users rely on our security platforms. I can't just abandon it because I want a simpler life." "No one's saying you should, but you can change how you engage with it. You can build boundaries. You can prioritize differently. You don't have to choose between success and humanity. You just have to stop letting success be your only measure of humanity." Selena dried her hands, looking around the small kitchen that suddenly felt more substantial than her entire penthouse. "Will you help me figure that out? How to do both? I don't want to keep learning in theory. I want to actually change." Miles met her eyes, something shifting in his expression. "That's a big ask, Selena." "I know, but I don't trust anyone else to tell me the truth. Everyone in my world has an agenda, wants something from me, sees me as useful rather than human. You're the only person I've met in years who's completely honest with me. Even when that honesty is uncomfortable? Especially then." Miles considered this for a long moment. Ava looked up from her homework, sensing the weight of the conversation. "What's going on?" she asked. "Ms. Vance is asking if I can help her learn to be less of a workaholic," Miles explained. Ava studied Selena with that direct, assessing gaze. "Are you going to listen? Because Dad says you can give people advice, but you can't make them follow it." "I'm going to listen," Selena promised. "Really listen, even when it's hard." "Okay then, Dad should help you. He's good at fixing things." Ava returned to her homework, apparently satisfied. Miles smiled. "Well, if Ava approves, I guess I'm in. But this isn't a consulting project, Selena. I'm not some life coach you're hiring. This is me trying to help another human being figure out how to be human. That means honesty, accountability, and actual change. Can you handle that?" "I don't know," Selena admitted, "but I want to try." "Then we'll try. Starting Monday, you're going to implement one new routine that prioritizes something other than work. Something that matters to you personally, not professionally." "Like what?" "That's for you to figure out. What's one thing you wish you had time for? One person you wish you could connect with? One activity that would make you feel more alive?" Selena thought about this, really thought about it. What did she want that had nothing to do with Nexus Technologies or quarterly earnings or market dominance? What would make her feel human instead of successful? "My sister," she said suddenly. "I have a younger sister in Portland. We haven't spoken in 3 years because I've been too busy. She stopped calling after I missed her wedding because of an investor meeting. There's your routine. Weekly calls with your sister. Same time, same day, no exceptions." "What if she won't talk to me?" "Then you keep calling until she does. That's what commitment looks like, showing up consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, until the relationship heals." Selena felt something flutter in her chest, fear maybe, or hope. "Okay, Sunday evenings. I'll call her every Sunday evening." "Good. That's your first small decision. Make it consistently, and eventually it becomes part of who you are instead of just something you're trying." They finished cleaning the kitchen, and Selena prepared to leave, gathering her coat and car keys. But at the door, she paused. "Miles, can I ask one more thing?" "Sure." "Why are you doing this? Helping me, I mean. You could have sent me away, kept your life separate from mine. Why invest time in helping someone who represents everything you walked away from?" Miles looked at her with something that might have been compassion or might have been recognition. "Because I remember what it felt like to realize I'd built my life wrong. To understand that everything I'd achieved meant nothing compared to what I'd sacrificed. And I remember how alone I felt in that realization, how much I wished someone had showed me a different path before I destroyed everything that mattered." He met her eyes directly. "So I'm showing you that path now, not because you deserve it or because you're special, but because everyone deserves the chance to become the person they wish they'd been all along. Everyone deserves the opportunity to choose meaning over metrics before they've lost everything that makes life worth living." Selena felt tears threaten again and fought them back. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've actually changed, when you've done the hard work of becoming someone different. Until then, it's just good intentions." She nodded and left, driving back toward her penthouse with her mind spinning. One routine: weekly calls with her sister. It seemed so small, so insufficient compared to the magnitude of change she needed. But Miles was right. You couldn't change everything at once. You could only make one small decision, then another, until eventually those decisions became a life. Sunday evening came faster than expected. Selena sat in her penthouse, staring at her phone, trying to summon the courage to call a sister she'd abandoned 3 years ago. Her finger hovered over the contact, and she felt like she was about to jump off a cliff. Finally, she pressed dial. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, "Hello? Emma? It's Selena." A long pause. "I know who it is. What do you want?" The coldness in Emma's voice hurt more than Selena had expected. "I want to talk. Really talk. Not just some quick catch-up. I want to apologize for missing your wedding, for being absent, for prioritizing work over you. And I want to do better." Another pause. "Why now? What changed?" "I met someone who showed me what I've been missing. Showed me that building an empire doesn't mean much if you destroy every relationship along the way. I've been a terrible sister, Emma, and I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry." Selena could hear her sister breathing, could practically feel her working through years of hurt and disappointment. One phone call doesn't fix 3 years of silence. "I know. That's why I'm calling every Sunday evening from now on. Same time, every week, no matter what. I'm committing to showing up, even if you don't want to talk to me, even if it takes months or years. I'm going to show up." Emma laughed, short and sharp. "That's very dramatic, very you. Is that a yes?" Let me think about it. I need to talk to James, process this. Call me next Sunday. If I answer, we'll talk. If I don't, try again the week after." "I'll call," Selena promised. "Every week. I promise. We'll see." The call ended, and Selena sat holding her phone, feeling like she'd just fought a battle she hadn't won but hadn't lost either. Progress, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. She texted Miles. Made the first call. She's thinking about it. This is harder than I expected. His response came quickly. "Good. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing. Keep calling." Selena set down her phone and walked to her windows, looking out over Seattle's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, Miles was probably reading Ava a bedtime story. Emma was probably discussing with her husband whether to forgive a sister who'd chosen work over family for years. And Selena was standing in her perfect penthouse, finally understanding that she'd built a beautiful prison and called it success. The question was whether she had the courage to walk out of it, whether she could transform from the person she'd become into the person she should have been all along, whether meaning could replace metrics before she ran out of time to discover what mattered. Small decisions, Miles had said, one after another, until they became a life. Selena thought she was starting to understand, but understanding and doing were different things, and the hardest part was just beginning. 3 weeks of Sunday phone calls passed before Emma finally agreed to meet in person. 3 weeks of awkward conversations that started with silence and ended with tentative progress. 3 weeks of Selena showing up consistently, exactly as she'd promised, while Emma tested whether this change was real or just another temporary performance. The coffee shop Emma chose was in Portland's Pearl District, deliberately inconvenient for Selena to reach, probably a test of commitment. Selena arrived 15 minutes early anyway, ordered tea she wouldn't drink, and tried to calm the nervousness fluttering in her chest. Emma walked in exactly on time, and Selena felt her breath catch. Her younger sister had changed, older obviously, but also more settled, more confident. The uncertain 22-year-old who'd called constantly during college had become a woman who'd learned to stop needing people who wouldn't show up. "You came," Emma said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I said I would." "You've said a lot of things over the years." "Fair point." Selena absorbed the hit without defending herself. "You're right, I have, and I've broken most of those promises, but I'm trying to do better." Emma ordered coffee, studying Selena with an expression that fell somewhere between hope and skepticism. "So what happened? You were always too busy, too important, too focused on building your empire. What suddenly made you remember you have a sister?" "I met someone who showed me what I'd become. Someone who chose his daughter over $1 million because promises to family matter more than professional success. And I realized I'd spent 18 years becoming someone who would never understand that choice." Selena wrapped her hands around her teacup, needing something to hold on to. "I realized I'd burned down every relationship that mattered because I was too afraid of being powerless to let anyone close enough to matter." Emma absorbed this quietly. "You missed my wedding, Selena. You said you'd be there. You promised to be my maid of honor. And then the morning of the wedding, you sent a text saying an investor meeting came up. A text. Not even a phone call." "I know." "Do you? Do you actually understand what that felt like? Standing there in my wedding dress, explaining to everyone that my sister, my only family, couldn't be bothered to show up." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "James's entire family was there, all his cousins and aunts and uncles and second cousins twice removed, and I had nobody, because you chose work over me. Again." Selena felt tears building and didn't fight them this time. "You're right, and I'm sorry. Not sorry because it's what you want to hear, but sorry because I finally understand what I did. I chose fear over love, control over connection, success over every relationship that could have given my life actual meaning, and I lost you because of it." "You didn't just lose me, you threw me away like I was disposable." "I know, and I don't expect forgiveness, Emma. I don't expect you to trust me or welcome me back into your life. I just want the chance to show up consistently, to prove that I'm committed to doing better, to be the sister I should have been all along." Emma's coffee arrived, and she wrapped both hands around the mug, mirror image of Selena's defensive gesture. They sat in silence for a long moment, years of hurt and disappointment hanging between them. "Tell me about this person," Emma said finally. "The one who showed you what you'd become." So Selena told her about Miles and Ava, about pizza nights and bedtime stories, about a man who'd walked away from everything that made him exceptional, because being excellent was destroying what made him human. She told Emma about shadowing their Saturday routine, about learning that small moments mattered more than grand achievements, about starting to understand that she'd built her entire life on the wrong foundation. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from skepticism to something more complex. "And you're trying to change because of them?" "I'm trying to change because I finally see what I've been missing. Miles and Ava just showed me the mirror I'd been avoiding for 18 years. What does this Miles person get out of helping you?" "Nothing. That's what makes it so unsettling. He doesn't want my money, doesn't want career opportunities, doesn't want anything except to help another human being figure out how to be human. It's completely outside my understanding of how the world works." Emma smiled slightly. "Sounds like you've only been understanding half the world, the transactional half." "Apparently." More silence. Emma drank her coffee, and Selena could see her working through something internal, some calculation about whether her sister's transformation was real or temporary. "I'm pregnant," Emma said abruptly. Selena's breath stopped. "What?" 4 months. We weren't going to tell anyone yet, but if you're serious about showing up, you should know. You're going to be an aunt." Emma's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. And I need to know if you're actually going to be present for this or if you're going to disappear again when work gets busy. Emma, Selena stopped, feeling the weight of this moment crystallize. This wasn't just about reconciling with her sister anymore. This was about whether she'd be part of her niece or nephew's life, whether she'd show up for birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments, whether she'd be the kind of Aunt Ava deserved or the kind who sent expensive gifts instead of presents. "I'll be there," she said quietly. "Every step. I promise. And I know my promises haven't meant much historically, but I'm going to prove this one is different." How? By showing up. Consistently, persistently, even when it's inconvenient. I'll be at doctor appointments if you want me there. I'll help with the nursery. I'll learn how to be an aunt instead of just a successful CEO who occasionally remembers she has family. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I want to believe you." "Then let me prove it. Give me the chance to be better." "Okay," Emma whispered. "But Selena, if you disappear again, if you choose work over this baby, I'm done. No more chances, no more phone calls, no more trying. This is it." "I understand. And I won't disappear. Not this time." They talked for 2 more hours, and Selena felt something beginning to heal between them. Not fully repaired, that would take years, but starting to mend in small, tentative ways. Emma told her about James's job, their new house, their hopes and fears about becoming parents. Selena shared carefully edited stories about Nexus Technologies, leaving out the part where work had consumed her so completely she'd forgotten what mattered. When they finally said goodbye, Emma hugged her briefly. "Same time next week?" "I'll be here." "Good. And Selena, thank you for trying." Selena drove back to Seattle feeling like she'd just passed a test she didn't know she was taking. One relationship beginning to heal, one chance to do better, one small decision that was starting to become something larger. She texted Miles from a rest stop. "Met with Emma. She's pregnant. I'm going to be an aunt. I think I'm terrified." His response, "Good. Being terrified means you understand what's at stake. Now show up anyway." That became the pattern for the next month. Selena showed up for Sunday calls with Emma. Started leaving work at 6 instead of 9. Declined evening networking events that would have expanded her professional network. Made small decisions that prioritized connection over achievement, presence over productivity. Victoria noticed the change and didn't like it. "You missed the Singapore Tech Summit," she said one afternoon, standing in Selena's office with an expression of profound confusion. "The Singapore Summit, Selena, where you were supposed to keynote and network with every major player in Asian cybersecurity." "I know, I sent apologies and had Thomas present instead." "Why?" "Because it was my sister's birthday, and I promised I'd be there." Victoria stared at her like she'd just announced plans to join a monastery. "You chose a birthday party over the Singapore Summit." "Yes." "What is happening to you?" Selena looked up from her computer, meeting Victoria's concerned gaze directly. "I'm remembering that success isn't the same as significance. That building an empire doesn't mean much if you're alone in it. That maybe I've been measuring the wrong things for 18 years. Mom, that's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure." "I know. But I'm tired, Victoria. Tired of being successful and lonely. Tired of achieving things that don't actually matter to anyone who loves me. Tired of building something impressive instead of something meaningful." Victoria sat down slowly. "You're scaring me." "Why?" "Because you're the most driven person I've ever met. Your focus, your determination, your absolute refusal to accept defeat. That's what built this company. That's what made us successful. And now you're talking about priorities shifting and presence mattering, and I'm worried you're about to walk away from everything we've built." "I'm not walking away," Selena said firmly, "but I'm changing how I engage. I'm setting boundaries. I'm making space for life instead of letting work consume everything. That doesn't mean I'm less committed to Nexus. It means I'm committed to being a whole human being instead of just a successful CEO. And if the company suffers because of it, then we'll figure it out. But Victoria, I've been working 100-hour weeks for 18 years. I've sacrificed every relationship, every personal goal, every moment of rest in service of this company. And what has it gotten me? Money I don't spend, success I can't enjoy, and a penthouse that feels like a very expensive prison cell." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Is this about the maintenance worker, Miles Carter? It's about realizing he's figured out something I haven't. He knows what matters, and he's built his life around protecting it. I've built my life around achievement, and it's left me with nothing that actually sustains me. So you're learning from him? Yes. And it's harder than anything I've ever done because it requires me to dismantle beliefs I've held for 18 years. But I'm doing it anyway because the alternative is spending the next 40 years being successful and miserable. Victoria absorbed this, her expression complex. Just promise me you won't make any drastic decisions without discussing them first. You're important to this company, Selena. To me. I don't want to lose you to some midlife crisis disguised as self-discovery. It's not a crisis, it's a correction, and I promise, no drastic decisions without conversation. But even as Selena made that promise, she knew something was building. The cognitive dissonance between who she'd been and who she was becoming couldn't be sustained indefinitely. Eventually, something would have to give. That something arrived 3 weeks later in the form of Gordon Vance. Selena's father had been absent from her life since she was 12, since the house fire that killed her mother and left her orphaned. He'd remarried within 6 months, started a new family, and made it clear that his daughter from his first marriage was an inconvenient reminder of a past he'd rather forget. She'd seen him exactly twice in 22 years, once at her mother's funeral, once when he'd shown up demanding to know why she hadn't invited him to her Stanford graduation. Now he sat in her office at Nexus Technologies, looking older but no less calculating, wearing a suit that suggested continued financial success. "Hello, Selena." She felt ice form in her chest. "What are you doing here?" "I heard you've been making some interesting choices lately. Leaving work early, missing important summits, prioritizing personal matters over professional obligations." He smiled, and it reminded her exactly why she'd spent 18 years building armor against vulnerability. "I thought perhaps you needed some paternal guidance. I don't need anything from you." "Don't you?" Gordon settled into the chair across from her desk, uninvited. "I did some research. This maintenance worker you've been spending time with, Miles Carter, single father, military background, currently making $14 an hour fixing broken toilets. And his daughter, Ava, 10 years old, apparently quite bright." Selena felt warning bells screaming, "Stay away from them!" "I'm simply observing that you're making questionable associations. People might wonder if the CEO of Nexus Technologies is fit to lead if she's spending her time slumming with maintenance workers and their children." "Get out of my office." Gordon didn't move. "I'm here because I have a proposal. Step back from these distractions, refocus on building your company, and I'll invest $50 million in Nexus's next expansion phase. Continue down this path of personal indulgence, and I'll make things very difficult for your new friends." "Excuse me?" Child Protective Services can be quite thorough when they receive credible concerns about a single father's living situation. Maintenance work doesn't pay well, and that apartment Miles Carter lives in might not meet all the standards required for raising a child. Gordon's smile widened. "And regional coding competitions have strict eligibility requirements. It would be unfortunate if young Ava's submission was flagged for irregularities." Selena stood slowly, rage building in her chest. "Are you threatening to harm a 10-year-old girl to control my behavior?" "I'm suggesting that your choices have consequences, that perhaps you should remember who you are and what you've built instead of playing house with people beneath your station." "Beneath my station?" Selena walked around her desk, stopping directly in front of her father. "Miles Carter is worth 100 of you. He's brave enough to prioritize what matters, strong enough to walk away from work that was destroying him, and loving enough to show up for his daughter every single day. He's everything you never were and everything I'm trying to become." How touching, and completely irrelevant to the business of running a major technology company. "Actually, it's completely relevant because I'm done, Dad. Done with measuring success by metrics that don't actually matter. Done with building empires at the cost of humanity. Done with being the kind of person who values achievement over connection." Gordon's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No. The mistake was spending 18 years becoming you, building success through fear and control, measuring worth in dollars and market share, treating people as tools instead of humans. I'm correcting that mistake now."
By throwing away everything you've built? By remembering why I built it in the first place? I became powerful, so I'd never be vulnerable again, so no one could hurt me the way you hurt me when you walked away after Mom died.
But you know what I've learned? That kind of power is just another form of prison. I've been so focused on never being hurt that I forgot how to connect with anyone who might actually matter. She met his eyes directly, feeling something shift inside her. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe release. So here's my counter proposal. Leave my office, leave Seattle, and never contact me again. If you threaten Miles or Ava, if you interfere in their lives in any way, I will dedicate every resource I have to destroying whatever financial empire you've built. I will make it my personal mission to ensure you lose everything. Gordon stood slowly. You're not capable of that kind of ruthlessness. You're getting soft. No, I'm finally getting strong. Strong enough to protect what matters instead of just protecting myself. Now get out before I have security escort you. He studied her for a long moment, and Selena could see him calculating whether she was serious. Whatever he saw in her expression must have convinced him, because he turned toward the door without another word. At the threshold, he paused. Your mother would be disappointed. My mother would be proud that I'm finally learning what actually matters. Goodbye, Gordon. After he left, Selena sat at her desk, shaking with adrenaline and something that might have been liberation. She'd just threatened her own father, drawn a line she couldn't uncross, chosen Miles and Ava over any potential relationship with the man who'd abandoned her 22 years ago. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt right. She called Miles immediately. We need to talk. Are you and Ava safe right now? We're fine. What's going on? My father just threatened you both, implied he'd call child services on you and sabotage Ava's competition entry to control my behavior. I told him to leave and never come back, but I need you to be careful. Silence on the other end. Then, why would your father care who you spend time with? Because he's a controlling, manipulative person who measures success in domination. And I spent 18 years becoming exactly like him until you showed me a different path. Selena felt tears threatening. I'm so sorry, Miles. I never meant to bring this into your life. Hey, stop. This isn't your fault. You're not responsible for your father's actions. His voice was steady, grounding. But we do need to be smart about this. I'll document everything: housing conditions, Ava's school records, financial stability. If anyone from CPS shows up, we'll be ready. Is there anything I can do? Actually, yes. Can you look into my employment status? Make sure there's no way he can get me fired or cause problems at work? I know that's asking a lot. Consider it done. I'll put you under direct protection of executive security. Anyone who tries to touch your employment goes through me first. Selena was already typing on her computer, implementing safeguards. And Miles? Thank you. For what? For showing me what's worth protecting. For teaching me that connection matters more than control. For being exactly who you are even when it costs you. I'm just a dad trying to raise his kid right. You're more than that. You're proof that there's a better way to live. And I'm grateful I found you before I'd burned down everything that could have made my life meaningful. After they disconnected, Selena sat in her office, processing what had just happened. She'd chosen Miles and Ava over her father, chosen connection over family obligation, even though that family connection was already broken beyond repair. The old Selena would have calculated the strategic advantage, would have manipulated the situation to maintain all her options. The new Selena, still forming, still uncertain, had simply chosen what mattered and accepted the consequences. Victoria appeared in her doorway. Your father just left the building. He looked angry. What happened? He tried to threaten people I care about to control my behavior. I told him to leave and never come back. Victoria's eyebrows rose. That's definitive. It needed to be. I'm done letting fear of powerlessness drive every decision I make. Done building walls so high that nothing meaningful can reach me. If that means burning bridges with my father, so be it. He burned his bridge with me 22 years ago. I'm just finally acknowledging it. You're really changing. I'm really trying. Selena looked at her oldest friend, her most trusted advisor. And I need your help. I need you to support me in building a different kind of company. One that values people as much as profit, that measures success and impact rather than just earnings, that creates space for leaders to be human beings instead of just productive machines. That's a radical shift from how we've operated.
I know, but I can't keep being who I was. That version of me was successful and lonely and ultimately unsustainable. So I'm building a different version, and I need to know if you're with me or if this is where we part ways. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. You know what's funny? I've been waiting years for you to realize this. Watching you work yourself to death, sacrifice everything personal for professional achievement, and wondering when you'd finally understand that you could have both. You never said anything. Would you have listened? Fair point. Probably not. So I waited, figured eventually something would break through your armor. I just didn't expect it to be a maintenance worker and his 10-year-old daughter. Victoria smiled. But I'm glad it was. You're becoming someone I actually want to work with, instead of someone I'm just professionally loyal to. Was I really that bad? You were brilliant and terrifying and completely inaccessible as a human being. I respected you, but didn't particularly like you. Now, I'm starting to do both. Selena felt something warm in her chest. Thank you for staying anyway. Thank you for finally becoming someone worth staying for. That night, Selena drove to Miles's apartment unannounced. She needed to see them, to make sure they were safe, to prove to herself that her father's threats hadn't caused any immediate damage. Miles answered the door in his usual evening uniform, sweatpants, faded t-shirt, bare feet. Selena, you okay? I needed to make sure you were both safe. He stepped aside, letting her in. Ava was at the kitchen table working on her coding competition entry and looked up when Selena entered. Ms. Vance, want to see what I added today? For the next hour, Selena sat with Ava while the girl explained her latest improvements to SafeSpace, new features, better encryption, more robust error handling. Miles made tea and brought out cookies, and the three of them existed in a moment that felt startlingly normal given the threats that had been issued earlier. When Ava finally went to get ready for bed, Miles joined Selena on the couch. You didn't have to come all the way here to check on us. Yes, I did. I needed to see you were okay. I needed to know my father's threats were just words. They probably were. Men like that operate through intimidation, not action. He's counting on you being scared enough to comply. I'm not scared of him anymore. I'm scared for you and Ava. Miles reached over, covering her hand with his. The gesture was simple, friendly, but Selena felt electricity run through her at the contact. We're going to be fine, he said quietly. I've dealt with actual threats before. Hostile foreign actors trying to compromise critical infrastructure, nation-state level cyber attacks that could have killed thousands of people. Your father threatening to call CPS is almost quaint by comparison. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But it does mean we can handle it. We'll be smart, we'll be careful, and we'll trust that documentation and evidence matter more than one man's attempted manipulation. Selena looked at their joined hands, feeling something shift in her chest. When did you become the stable one in this dynamic? Miles laughed. I've always been stable. You're just finally slowing down enough to notice. I'm trying. It's harder than I expected, this whole being present thing. Every instinct tells me to work harder, achieve more, control every variable. But I'm learning that control is just another form of fear. That's good insight. What else are you learning? Selena met his eyes, feeling brave or stupid or possibly both. That I care about you, both of you. More than is probably wise given how recently you entered my life. That the thought of my father threatening Ava made me angrier than anything has made me in years. That sitting here in your living room feels more like home than my entire penthouse. Miles didn't pull his hand away, but his expression became more serious. Selena, I know. I know I'm a mess, that I'm still figuring out how to be human, that I have 18 years of dysfunctional patterns to unlearn. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you the truth because you're the one person who's always been honest with me, and I want to return the favor. The truth is complicated. I know. I'm not ready for anything beyond friendship. Maybe I'll never be ready. Rebecca's only been gone 5 years, and I'm still figuring out how to be a single father. Adding a relationship on top of that, especially with someone as intense as you, feels like it would destabilize everything I've built with Ava. I understand. But, Miles continued, squeezing her hand gently, I care about you too.
I've watched you work harder at changing yourself than most people work at anything. I've seen you make difficult choices, prioritize differently, show up even when it's uncomfortable. That matters. You matter. Just not enough to risk what you have with Ava. It's not about enough. It's about timing and readiness and protecting what's most vulnerable. Ava is still healing from losing her mother. I'm still learning how to be the father she deserves. Adding a relationship into that equation right now would be irresponsible. Selena nodded, understanding even though it hurt. You're right. I'm not even ready for a relationship. I barely know how to maintain a friendship. I just wanted you to know that you've changed my life, and I'm grateful. The feeling is mutual. You've reminded me that transformation is possible, that people can change if they want it badly enough. That's a gift. Ava's voice called from her room. Dad, I need help with my project. Miles smiled, standing. Duty calls. Want to stay for bedtime story? Ava's been asking if you'd read with us sometime. Really? Really, she likes you, Selena. Says you're the only adult besides me who talks to her like she's smart instead of cute. I'd love to. 20 minutes later, Selena found herself on one side of Ava's bed, Miles on the other, reading a chapter about a girl who discovered she could reprogram reality. Ava asked thoughtful questions about the science fiction concepts, and Selena found herself debating computational theory with a 10-year-old while Miles refereed with amused commentary. When Ava's eyes finally started to close, Miles kissed her forehead. Love you, princess. Love you too, Dad. Then sleepily, night, Ms. Vance. Thanks for reading. Night, Ava. Thanks for letting me. In the living room afterward, Miles walked Selena to the door. Thank you for tonight, she said, for letting me be part of this, for teaching me what matters. Thank you for being willing to learn. Not everyone would do the work you're doing. I don't have a choice. The alternative is going back to who I was, and I can't do that. Not now that I've seen what I was missing. Miles looked at her carefully, something shifting in his expression. Your father was wrong, you know. About what? About us being beneath your station. You're not slumming by spending time with us. You're finally operating at the right level, human level, instead of corporate abstraction level. That's not descent. That's arriving where you should have been all along. Selena felt tears threaten for the third time that day. How do you always know exactly what I need to hear? Because I've been where you are, lost, trying to find my way back to humanity, wondering if transformation is even possible. So I recognize the signs. And you think I can make it? Become someone different? I think you already are. You just need to trust it. Selena left the apartment feeling lighter than she had in years. Her father had threatened people she cared about. She'd burned that bridge permanently, and Miles had gently but clearly established boundaries about romantic involvement. By any objective measure, the day had been difficult, but she'd chosen what mattered, protected who she loved, made decisions based on values instead of strategy, and that felt like progress. What Selena didn't know yet was that her father's threats weren't just words, that Gordon Vance had contacts and resources, and absolutely no scruples about using them, that the real crisis was just beginning, and that sometimes choosing what matters means fighting for it with everything you have, even when the cost is everything you've built, even when winning might look like losing, even when the only way forward is through complete destruction of who you used to be. Those lessons were coming. But tonight, Selena drove home feeling something she'd forgotten was possible. Hope that she could become someone different, someone better, someone who measured success in moments instead of metrics. And that was enough to keep going. The call came at 2 a.m, jarring Selena from the first decent sleep she'd had in weeks. Miles's name on her screen sent immediate adrenaline through her system. Miles? What's wrong? CPS showed up an hour ago. Anonymous complaint about living conditions and my ability to provide adequate care for Ava. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the fury underneath. They did a full inspection, interviewed Ava, reviewed my financial records. The caseworker just left. Selena was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. What did they conclude? That the complaint was clearly malicious and without merit. Our apartment is clean, Ava is healthy and well cared for, and my employment is stable. But Selena, They woke up my 10-year-old daughter at 1 in the morning and questioned her about whether she felt safe in her own home. She's terrified and confused, and His voice cracked. I'm trying to stay calm for her, but I want to destroy whoever did this. It was my father. It had to be. Selena grabbed her car keys, already heading for the door. I'm coming over. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She made it in 15, breaking probably 6 traffic laws along the way. Miles answered the door immediately, and she could see the exhaustion and rage warring in his expression. Behind him, Ava sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Selena had ever seen her. Hey, Ava, Selena said softly, sitting beside her. I heard you had a scary night. Ava nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. The lady asked if my dad ever hurt me, if I had enough food, if I was scared of him. Her voice was small, confused. Why would she think Dad would hurt me? He's the best dad in the whole world. Selena felt rage building in her chest, cold, focused rage that made her previous anger seem like mild irritation. Because some people are cruel and they use the system to hurt good people. But Ava, I promise you, this won't happen again. I'm going to make sure of it. How? By fixing the problem at its source. Miles pulled Selena aside while Ava returned to staring blankly at the TV. What are you planning? To end this. Permanently. My father thinks he can threaten you and Ava to control my behavior. He's about to learn exactly how wrong he is. Selena, be careful. Men like that don't respond well to direct confrontation. I'm not confronting him. I'm destroying him. She met Miles's eyes directly. You told me once that I'm braver than I know. Let's test that theory. Over the next 3 days, Selena did something she'd never done before. She used every resource at her disposal not to build her empire bigger, but to protect the people who'd become more important than any empire. She hired the best private investigator in Seattle, retained a family law attorney who specialized in defending against malicious CPS complaints, and reached out to every contact she had who might have information about Gordon Vance's business dealings. What she found was damning. Her father had built his fortune through a series of questionable real estate deals, tax shelters that skirted legality, and partnerships with investors who'd later been convicted of fraud. He'd stayed clean by staying connected, friends in the right places, donations to the right politicians, lawyers who specialized in making problems disappear. But Selena had something Gordon didn't: legitimate power, legitimate connections, and absolutely no mercy for people who threatened children. She started making calls. The first was to her company's chief legal officer. David, I need you to compile a report on Gordon Vance's business holdings. Everything. Real estate, investments, partnerships, tax filings for the past 20 years. I want to know every vulnerability, every questionable decision, every place where scrutiny would cause problems. David hesitated. Selena, that's your father. Are you sure? He threatened a 10-year-old girl to manipulate my behavior. I'm absolutely sure. Get me the report by tomorrow morning. The second call was to Emma. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did Dad ever reach out to you, try to control your life through threats or manipulation? Emma was quiet for a long moment. He showed up right after I got engaged to James, told me James wasn't good enough, that I was making a mistake. That if I went through with the wedding, he'd make sure James's business failed. I told him to leave and never spoke to him again. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't speaking to me then. And because I handled it myself. James and I got married anyway, and Dad never followed through on his threats. I figured he was all talk. He's not all talk anymore. He called CPS on Miles, had them investigate him for child abuse because I've been spending time with Miles and his daughter. Woke up a 10-year-old at 1 in the morning to question her about whether she felt safe in her own home. Emma's sharp intake of breath was audible. That's monstrous. That's Gordon Vance, and I'm ending it. But I need to know, will you help me? I'm going to expose every questionable thing he's ever done, use every connection I have to ensure he faces consequences. It might get ugly. I'm in. What do you need? Everything you remember about his business dealings, his threats, any documentation you have. I'm building a case that will bury him. The third call was the hardest. To her company's board of directors, specifically to Margaret Chen, the only board member who'd ever challenged Selena's decisions and lived to tell about it. Margaret, I need advice. Personal advice, not professional. I'm listening. If you discovered that someone in your family was actively harming innocent people, threatening children, using their power maliciously, and you had the resources to stop them, but doing so would be public and messy, what would you do? Margaret was quiet for a moment. Is this about your father? How did you... I did my research when you brought me onto the board, knew about the house fire, your mother's death, your father remarrying and essentially abandoning you, and I've watched you build this company like you're constructing a fortress against ever being vulnerable again. Margaret's voice softened. What did he do? Selena told her everything, the threats, the CPS visit, the pattern of manipulation and control. When she finished, Margaret sighed heavily. You already know what you need to do. You're just afraid of becoming like him, using power to destroy someone, even when they deserve it. Exactly. But here's the difference, Selena. He uses power to control people, to maintain dominance, to serve his own ego. You're using power to protect innocence, to stop harm, to serve something beyond yourself. Those aren't the same thing, even if the methods look similar. So I should do it? I think you'd never forgive yourself if you didn't. But Selena, be strategic. Don't just destroy him out of rage. Build a case so airtight that when you move, it's final and legal and leaves him no room to retaliate. That's the plan. Good. And one more thing. I'm proud of you. You've spent months becoming someone different, someone better. This is part of that transformation, protecting what matters instead of just protecting yourself. By Friday afternoon, Selena had everything she needed. David's report detailed numerous violations in Gordon's business practices: tax fraud, misrepresentation to investors, partnerships with convicted felons. Emma had provided documentation of his threats and manipulative behavior. The private investigator had found 3 other families Gordon had threatened over the years using similar tactics. And Selena had found something else. Gordon didn't actually own the majority of his business empire. It was held in a family trust created by Selena's grandparents with specific provisions about how the assets could be transferred. Provisions that gave Selena, as the eldest grandchild and only child of the original marriage, significant control if she chose to exercise it. Her grandfather had apparently been smarter than Gordon gave him credit for. He'd built in safeguards, probably suspecting his son might abuse any power given to him. Selena called her father one last time. We need to meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the downtown Starbucks. Come alone. I don't take orders from you. You will for this conversation, 10 a.m. Don't be late. She arrived early, claimed a corner table, and waited. Gordon showed up 12 minutes late, probably a power play, looking confident and vaguely amused. This better be important. I have a golf game at noon. Selena slid a folder across the table. Read this. He opened it, and she watched his expression shift from amusement to confusion to dawning horror as he processed the contents. Tax fraud documentation, evidence of CPS manipulation, testimony from other families he'd threatened, and finally, the trust documents showing exactly how much control Selena actually had over his financial empire. Where did you get this? His voice had lost its confidence. I built a tech empire from nothing, Dad. Finding information is literally what my company does. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over operational control of the family trust to me. You'll retain enough assets to live comfortably, but you'll have no authority to threaten, manipulate, or harm anyone ever again. You can't do this. I absolutely can. I have a lawyer standing by, documents prepared, and enough evidence of your illegal activity to ensure you spend the next decade in federal prison if you refuse. Your choice. Sign the papers and retire quietly, or fight me and lose everything, including your freedom. Gordon's face had gone pale. You'd really destroy your own father? You destroyed our family when you walked away after Mom died. You abandoned me when I was 16 and grieving and needed a parent. You tried to harm an innocent child to control my behavior. So yes, I'd really destroy you, without hesitation and without regret. I'm your father. No. You're the man who provided half my DNA and then proved that biology doesn't create obligation. You stopped being my father 22 years ago. Now you're just someone who made the mistake of threatening people I actually care about. She pulled out a second set of documents. Sign these. Transfer control of the trust. Walk away from Seattle and never contact me, Miles, or Ava again. Do that, and you keep enough money to maintain your lifestyle. Fight me, and I'll dedicate every resource I have to ensuring you end up in prison. Gordon stared at the papers, his hands trembling slightly. For the first time in Selena's memory, he looked old and scared and powerless. You've become hard, he said quietly. No, I've become strong. There's a difference. Hard people hurt others to protect themselves. Strong people protect others even when it costs them. I'm finally learning to be the latter. He signed the papers. Every page, every transfer of authority, every acknowledgement of his crimes. Selena watched him reduce his own power to nothing and felt no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. One more thing, she said as he prepared to leave. If you ever contact me again, if you ever threaten anyone I care about, if you so much as drive through Seattle, I will release all of this documentation to every prosecutor and journalist who'll listen. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Goodbye, Gordon. He left, and Selena sat alone at the table, feeling like she'd just fought and won the most important battle of her life. Not for market share or quarterly earnings or professional success, but for the right to protect people she loved without having to constantly watch for threats. She called Miles immediately. It's done. My father signed everything. He won't bother you again. What did you do? Used his own tactics against him. Gathered evidence, applied pressure, gave him a choice between losing some power or losing everything. He chose survival. She paused. Miles, I need you to know I didn't do this to impress you or win your approval. I did it because Ava looked terrified on her own couch, and I will burn down the entire world before I let anyone make her feel that way again. I know. And Selena, thank you. Really, you didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did, because you and Ava matter. You matter more than my relationship with my father, more than avoiding conflict, more than keeping my life simple and uncomplicated. You taught me what's worth protecting. This was me finally learning the lesson. You're a good person, Selena Vance. I'm learning to be. Still got a long way to go, but I'm learning. That evening, Selena showed up at Miles's apartment with pizza, half pineapple and ham for Ava, half mushroom and peppers for Miles, and a third cheese section for herself. The Friday night tradition she'd observed, now joining instead of just witnessing. Ava hugged her immediately. Dad told me what you did, that the scary lady won't come back. She won't, I promise. And Ava, I'm sorry that happened to you. You didn't deserve it, and it was my fault for bringing my family problems into your life. It wasn't your fault. Your dad is just mean. Ava said it matter-of-factly, without malice. But you're nice, so you're not like him. I'm trying not to be. They ate pizza and watched a movie about a girl who built a robot, and Selena felt something settle in her chest. This was what mattered. This ordinary moment with people who'd become extraordinary to her, this simple tradition that valued presence over everything else. When Ava went to get ready for bed, Miles joined Selena on the couch. You know what I realized today? She said. What's that? That I spent 18 years building power to protect myself from being hurt. But real strength isn't avoiding hurt. It's caring about people enough to be vulnerable to them, risking connection even when it might cost you, choosing love over safety. That's good wisdom. Where'd you learn that? From a maintenance worker who turned down $1 million to watch his daughter's school presentation. From a 10-year-old girl who builds programs to protect other kids from bullying. From people who showed me that meaning matters more than metrics. Miles smiled. We're pretty ordinary, Selena. You might be giving us too much credit. No. You're extraordinary in the ways that actually matter, and I'm grateful I found you before I'd completely forgotten how to be human. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Selena felt something she'd forgotten was possible. Contentment. Not the aggressive satisfaction of professional achievement, but the quiet peace of being exactly where she was supposed to be with people who actually mattered. Miles? She said quietly. Yeah? Earlier you said you weren't ready for anything beyond friendship. I want you to know, I'm okay with that.
I'm not expecting or demanding anything more.
I just want to be in your lives in whatever capacity makes sense. Because you've both given me something I didn't know I was missing, and I don't want to lose it by pushing for more than you're ready to give. Miles looked at her carefully, something shifting in his expression. What did we give you? A reason to become someone different. A model for what actually matters. Evidence that transformation is possible even after 18 years of becoming the wrong person. She met his eyes. You gave me hope, Miles, and I'm more grateful for that than I can express. He reached over, taking her hand like he had before. You gave us something too, you know. What's that? Proof that people can change, that someone who's built their entire life around the wrong priorities can recognize it and do better. Ava watches you learning and growing, and she's seen that adults aren't fixed, that we can all keep becoming better versions of ourselves. He squeezed her hand gently. That's a gift. Thank you for being brave enough to do the work in front of her. Ava's voice called from her room. I'm ready for story time. Miles stood, then paused. Stay for the story? I'd love to. They read together, the three of them, and Selena felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced in any boardroom or business victory. When Ava finally drifted off, Miles kissed her forehead with the same gentle tenderness he showed every night. Love you, Princess? Love you too, Dad. Then, sleepily, love you, Selena. Selena felt her breath catch. Love you too, Ava. In the living room afterward, Miles walked her to the door as usual, but this time he didn't immediately open it. About what I said before, he started. About not being ready for anything beyond friendship. Miles, you don't have to... Let me finish. I wasn't ready then because I was scared of destabilizing what I'd built with Ava, scared of letting someone close enough to hurt us again. But watching you fight for us, protect Ava from your father's threats, choose us over your own family, that changed something. Selena's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe I'm ready to try. Slowly, carefully, with Ava's well-being as the top priority, but to try, if you're interested. If I'm interested? Selena laughed, feeling tears threaten. Miles, I've been interested since you turned down $1 million for a school presentation. I just didn't think I deserved someone like you. You do. You've worked harder at becoming a better person than anyone I've ever met. You've chosen growth over comfort, connection over control, love over safety. That's exactly the kind of person who deserves good things. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back, and kissed her gently. It was sweet and tentative and perfect. Nothing like the performance she'd offered in that boardroom months ago. Everything like a real beginning. When they pulled apart, Selena was smiling. So what happens now? Now we take it slow. We keep Friday pizza nights. We prioritize Ava. We build something real instead of something impressive. And we see where it goes. That sounds perfect. 3 months later, Selena sat in a different coffee shop in Portland, this time with Emma and her husband James. Emma's pregnancy was visible now, and she glowed with the kind of happiness that came from building something real. So you're really dating the maintenance worker, Emma said, amused. His name is Miles, and yes, and before you ask, it's the healthiest relationship I've ever had. We actually talk about real things. He calls me out when I'm being unreasonable, and Ava keeps me honest about my priorities. How's that working with running Nexus? I implemented new policies. Mandatory work-life balance for all executives, flex time for parents, and I'm testing a 4-day work week in our development division. Productivity hasn't dropped. It's actually increased because people are less burned out. James looked impressed. That's radical for a tech company. It's also right. I spent 18 years building a company that consumed its people. I'm rebuilding it to sustain them instead. And you know what's funny? Our employee retention is up. Our recruitment is easier. And the board is actually pleased with the direction. Because you're building something sustainable instead of just profitable, Emma observed. Exactly. Miles taught me that. You can't sustain success built on destroying the people who create it. Eventually, everyone burns out or quits or loses sight of why the work matters. So I'm creating space for people to be human while they're being productive. Emma reached across the table, taking Selena's hand. I'm proud of you. Really proud. You've become someone completely different in the best possible way. I had good teachers, and I finally learned to listen. The conversation shifted to baby preparations, and Selena found herself genuinely excited about becoming an aunt. She'd already bought too many baby clothes, started a college fund, and committed to being present for every important moment. Not out of obligation, but because Emma and this baby mattered more than any professional achievement ever could. When she left Portland that afternoon, driving back towards Seattle, Selena called Miles. "Hey, how was the visit?" "Really good. Emma and I are actually rebuilding something real, and I'm going to be an aunt in 4 months, which is terrifying and exciting in equal measure. You'll be great at it. You're already amazing with Ava." "How is Ava? Did she finish her competition entry?" "Submitted this morning. She's nervous but confident, which is exactly where she should be. And she wanted me to tell you she expects you at Friday pizza night because apparently you're part of the tradition now." Selena felt warmth spread through her chest. Wouldn't miss it for anything. Same pizza order? Same pizza order, though Ava's lobbying to add breadsticks to the rotation. "Breadsticks are negotiable. See you Friday." "See you Friday. Drive safe." Selena disconnected and drove toward home, not her penthouse with its designer perfection, but Miles's small apartment where Ava's artwork covered the walls and life happened in ordinary, extraordinary moments. She'd moved most of her essential belongings there over the past month, maintaining the penthouse mostly for work-related hosting. Her phone rang again. "Victoria." "Hey, the quarterly board meeting is scheduled for next month. You ready?" "Ready to present a quarter where we prioritize people as much as profit?" "Absolutely." "Ready to defend those choices to board members who think work-life balance is weakness?" "We'll see." "They're going to push back on the 4-day work week experiment." "Let them. I have data showing increased productivity, better retention, and higher employee satisfaction. That's what sustainable growth looks like. If they can't see that, they're not the right board members." Victoria laughed. "This is why I stayed with you through all the changes. You're still fierce when it matters. You've just redirected that fierceness toward better goals. Thanks for staying, for believing I could become someone different. Thanks for actually doing the work. A lot of people talk about change. You actually did it." After disconnecting, Selena drove in silence, processing how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been standing in a boardroom, mocking a maintenance worker for daring to suggest he could help. Now that maintenance worker was her partner, his daughter was teaching her what mattered, and she'd rebuilt her entire life around priorities that actually sustained her. She'd lost nothing that mattered and gained everything she'd been missing. When she arrived at Miles's apartment that evening, he was cooking dinner while Ava set the table. They moved around the small kitchen with practiced choreography, and Selena joined them seamlessly, cutting vegetables while Miles handled the stove, and Ava provided running commentary on her day. "So Maya and I are thinking about expanding Safe Space," Ava announced, "making it available to other schools. Ms. Chen thinks we could get grant funding." "That's ambitious," Selena said. "What would you need?" "Better servers, more robust encryption, and someone who actually knows about scaling applications. Dad knows the technical stuff, but neither of us knows about business operations." Miles caught Selena's eye, smiling. "Any ideas?" "Actually, yes. What if Nexus Technologies sponsored the expansion as a community initiative? We provide the infrastructure and business guidance, you and Maya maintain creative control, and we help you scale responsibly. No strings, no corporate takeover, just support for a project that actually matters." Ava's eyes went wide. "Really? You do that?" "I'd be honored to do that, but only if you and Maya are comfortable with it. This is your project, your vision. We'd just be facilitating the expansion. Can we think about it?" "Take all the time you need." They ate dinner together, and Selena watched Miles teach Ava something about proper knife technique while seasoning pasta. Normal moments, strung together with intention, creating a life that meant something beyond achievement or success. This was what she'd been missing. This connection, this presence, this sense that she was building something that would matter long after quarterly earnings were forgotten. After dinner, while Ava finished homework, Miles and Selena cleaned up together. "You know what I realized today?" Miles said, drying dishes. "What's that?" "That I was wrong about you." "How so?" "When you first showed up in that boardroom, I thought you were just another powerful person who'd lost touch with humanity. But you weren't lost. You were just looking in the wrong direction, All you needed was someone to turn you around and show you what actually matters. You make it sound simple. The concept is simple. The execution is hard. But you did the hard work, Selena. You dismantled 18 years of dysfunctional patterns, rebuilt your priorities, protected the people you love even when it cost you. That's not simple. That's heroic. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who finally figured out that empires don't keep you warm at night. Miles smiled, pulling her close. Maybe that's what heroism looks like in real life. Not grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices, but small choices made consistently toward becoming someone better. They stood together in the small kitchen, and Selena felt peace settle over her. This was success redefined, not billions in the bank or market dominance or professional accolades, but moments of connection with people who'd become her family. 6 months after that, Selena stood in a hospital room in Portland, holding her newborn niece while Emma recovered from delivery and James hovered nervously. "She's perfect," Selena whispered, looking down at the tiny red-faced baby. "She is," Emma agreed, exhausted but radiant. "We're naming her Claire, after Mom." Selena felt tears stream down her face. "Mom would have loved that. She would have loved seeing you like this too. Happy, connected, finally building a life instead of just a career." Miles appeared in the doorway with Ava, who'd insisted on coming to meet her new cousin, even though they weren't technically related. Ava approached carefully, peering at the baby with serious concentration. "She's so small," Ava observed. "Was I that small?" "Smaller, actually," Miles said. "You were barely 6 pounds. And you took care of me all by yourself?" "Best decision I ever made." Ava looked at Selena holding baby Claire, then at Miles, then back at the baby. "Are we a family now? Like a real family?" Miles and Selena exchanged glances, something passing between them without words. "Yeah, kiddo," Miles said softly. "I think we are." "Good. I like having more family. It feels less scary when there are more people." Selena carefully passed Claire to Emma and pulled Ava into a hug. "You're absolutely right. It's less scary when there are more people, and I'm honored to be part of your family." "Me too," Ava said, hugging back. "You're pretty cool for a CEO." Everyone laughed, and the moment crystallized into something Selena knew she'd remember forever. Not a board meeting or product launch or professional triumph, but this, standing in a hospital room with the people who'd become her family, watching new life begin, feeling connected to something larger than herself. 2 years after that first Friday night pizza tradition, Miles and Selena sat in Jefferson Elementary School's auditorium, watching Ava accept a Regional Innovation Award for Safe Space. The program had expanded to 43 schools across Washington state, had helped resolve over 200 bullying incidents, and had been featured in national education journals as a model for peer-driven safety initiatives. Ava stood at the podium, 12 years old now, and growing into her confidence, speaking to an audience of educators, parents, and students. "I built Safe Space because my friend was scared," she said, her voice steady and clear. "And I kept building it because lots of kids are scared. But the most important thing I learned wasn't about code or encryption or technical features. It was about showing up. My dad taught me that real success isn't about building perfect systems. It's about building systems that help real people, that the work matters because the people matter." She paused, looking directly at Miles and Selena in the audience. "My dad shows up for me every single day. He keeps promises even when it's hard. He chose me over everything else in the world, and he taught me that's what love looks like. Choosing people, consistently, even when other options seem easier or more impressive. And Selena taught me that it's never too late to become who you should have been, that you can spend years going in the wrong direction and still turn around and choose better." Selena felt tears streaming down her face. Miles reached over, taking her hand and squeezing gently. "So this award isn't really mine," Ava continued. "It belongs to everyone who believed that helping people matters more than being impressive. To my dad for teaching me what real strength looks like. To Selena for proving that powerful people can choose to use their power to protect instead of control. And to Maya and all the other kids who contributed ideas and code and hope that we could build something that makes the world a little bit safer." The applause was thunderous. Ava accepted her award, a plaque and a scholarship for future technology education, and came back to her seat between Miles and Selena,
grinning. "Did I do okay?" she whispered. "You were perfect," Miles said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were extraordinary," Selena added. "I'm so proud of you." "Learn from the best," Ava said, squeezing both their hands. After the ceremony, they went for ice cream, another tradition they'd built over 2 years of being a family. Ava ordered her usual ridiculous combination of flavors, Miles got boring vanilla, and Selena got chocolate with way too many toppings. "So," Miles said, watching Ava attack her ice cream with characteristic enthusiasm, "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," Selena teased. "Seriously, I've been thinking about next steps. For us, I mean." Selena's heart rate picked up. "What kind of next steps?" Miles looked at her, love and uncertainty mixing in his expression. "The kind where we make this official, where we build something permanent instead of just seeing where things go." "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Depends. If you think I'm asking you to marry me, then yes. If you think I'm asking something else, then definitely not that other thing." Ava looked up from her ice cream, eyes wide. "Dad, you're supposed to have a ring and do it romantic." "I have a ring," Miles said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. "I've been carrying it around for 3 weeks trying to find the perfect moment. But then I realized the perfect moment is just us, being exactly who we are, eating ice cream after watching our daughter change the world." He opened the box, revealing a simple ring that was somehow exactly right. "Selena Vance, will you marry me? Will you keep building this imperfect, chaotic, absolutely beautiful life with me and Ava? Will you choose us every day the way you've been choosing us for 2 years?" Selena was crying and laughing simultaneously. "Yes, absolutely yes. Every day, every moment, without hesitation or regret. Yes." Miles slipped the ring onto her finger, and Ava cheered loud enough that the entire ice cream shop turned to look. Other patrons started applauding, and Selena felt something she'd forgotten was possible: complete, unshadowed happiness. This was success. Not the boardrooms or quarterly earnings or market dominance. This, being chosen by people who mattered, building a family from love instead of obligation, creating meaning instead of just achievement. "I love you," she told Miles, then turned to Ava. "Both of you. More than I ever thought possible." "We love you too," Ava said seriously. "And now you're officially going to be my mom, which means you have to come to all my school events and help with homework and tell me when I'm being ridiculous." "I can do that. I'm pretty good at telling people when they're being ridiculous." "That's because you used to be ridiculous yourself," Ava observed. "But you got better. Which means there's hope for everyone." Miles laughed. "That's very philosophical for a 12-year-old. I'm wise beyond my years. You tell me that all the time." They finished their ice cream and drove home through Seattle's streets, and Selena looked at her ring catching the streetlights, feeling like she'd finally arrived at the destination she'd been searching for without knowing it existed. She'd started this journey standing in a boardroom, mocking a maintenance worker for daring to prioritize his daughter over professional success. She'd built an empire on fear and control, measuring worth in dollars and market share, convinced that power was the only protection against vulnerability. And then Miles Carter had walked into her life and shown her a different path, not through lectures or judgment, but through example, choosing his daughter consistently, building a life that prioritized presence over productivity, proving that meaning mattered more than metrics. The transformation hadn't been easy. She'd fought it, resisted it, struggled against 18 years of dysfunctional patterns. She'd faced her father's threats, rebuilt broken family relationships, restructured her entire company around different values. She'd learned to be vulnerable, to prioritize connection, to measure success in moments instead of achievements. And now, driving home with her fiancé and soon-to-be daughter, wearing a simple ring that meant more than any professional accolade ever could, Selena finally understood what Miles had been teaching her all along. Real strength wasn't avoiding hurt. It was caring about people enough to be vulnerable to them. Real power wasn't control. It was choosing who mattered and protecting them with everything you had. Real success wasn't building empires. It was building connections that sustained you when empires crumbled. She'd been searching for significance in all the wrong places, measuring herself by standards that couldn't capture what actually mattered.
But she'd found her way home, to a small apartment with secondhand furniture, to Friday night pizza traditions, to a family built on choice instead of obligation. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. "Hey," Miles said softly, reaching over to take her hand as they pulled into their parking spot. "Welcome home." Selena looked at the building that had once seemed so modest compared to her penthouse, now transformed into the most important place in her world. "Thanks for showing me where home actually was. I'd been looking in all the wrong places." "You found it anyway. That's what matters." They went upstairs together, Miles, Selena, and Ava, a family built from broken pieces and hard choices and the daily decision to show up for each other. Not perfect, not impressive by conventional standards, but real and sustainable and full of the kind of love that actually mattered. And as Selena helped Ava with homework, while Miles made dinner, as they moved through their evening routine with practiced ease, as they proved once again that ordinary moments strung together with intention created extraordinary lives, she felt something she'd never experienced in 18 years of professional success. Peace. Belonging. The profound certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the people who mattered, building exactly the life worth living. She'd lost nothing that mattered and gained everything she'd been missing. And that was the truest success of all.